Hello and welcome to God Tier Fanfiction. Today I'm gonna start a new series. What if Naruto was stuck in a high school zombie apocalypse? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Like every single day, today started off the same way. Wake up 15 minutes late after slamming the alarm clock once or twice. Verify. Before the heater fails, 2 seconds of hot water. Verify. Lack of clean clothes due to laundry expenses, which you still don't fully grasp how to handle. Verify again. A sniff test on an old, crusty school uniform. Fairly close. Ramen in the microwave for breakfast? That is reliable, at least. Indeed, High pitcher Uzumaki Naruto has a rock-like wallet, a swing, and an arm. Dirt poor. Born an orphan. Sarutobi Hiruzen, his legal guardian, tried his hardest. Naruto's upbringing by the elder man was based on morality and honor, although it was short-lived. However, children his age were more concerned with brands, grades, and getting through the day without feeling ashamed than they were with values. He's dead now, of course. Nobody ever anticipated the assassination of Hiruzen by a former pupil. Naruto was then given to a wandering porn writer whose heart was irreparably damaged. Jiraiya taught the boy strength, but he also drank excessively and used Naruto's lunch money to pay for companionship. Taught him to keep his heart open and his fists up. The life wasn't ideal. However, Naruto cherished them both and made it his daily goal to honor the grit and purpose they had given him. A policeman yelled at him from across the street as he skipped the final few steps onto the cracked sidewalk. "Hey, slow it down, kid, this ain't a playground." Naruto remained silent, simply waved and saluted half-heartedly before continuing to move. The same trash, another day. He jogged, or ran, holding his bag tossed with bats, balls, gloves, clothing, and his school materials half-assed into the same bag. Quickly reaching the higher-end part of the two, the child smiled cheerfully, waving towards 2 officers waiting outside a coffee shop. Imagine, of all things, coffee needing 2 policemen at the door. Sometimes he misses the states. Naruto. One grinned and waved. "Girl still invites you? Oh boy, don't drop the bag." The 2 police officers laughed and nearly tossed the boy in the direction of the door while having fun with the blue-eyed, blonde boy. He has a knack of bringing out the pleasure in everyone. A pale female with long red hair said, clearly irritated, "Late again." When Naruto's gaze fell on the pale redhead with brown eyes, his smile only widened. He believes that for the past 3 months, Lee Na-yeon and the two have been meeting up here and strolling together to school. Began when he and those 2 police officers leapt the front vending machine for stealing his money. After a furious altercation, the two had learned to put along with one another. "Most likely incorrect. And you're still wearing my old jacket," he said, grinning and keeping his gaze fixed on the young, wealthy girl. God enjoys having a thing with a papered princess with a large bite, and arrogant constantly craves attention, fears everything, and despises the impoverished. She glared and gave the blonde his usual order. "You were going to burn it," she added. She is unaware that Naruto didn't know what he was eating or drinking. Rich folks with their strange and confusing language drove him mad half the time. Thought you hated orange? Despite having all that work done to make it more fitting, his boyhood jacket is still too big for her. The bright orange, blue, and white jacket looks excellent on her, though. "Keep talking, I'm not helping you with laundry. You know," he continued, walking behind her, "you complain a lot for someone who keeps showing up with food." "I'm not feeding you," she shot back, as sharp as a nail and flat as a board. His eyes tightened, not in rage, as he said, "I'm preserving society by preventing you from committing war crimes against breakfast." Na-yeon quickly realized how many tics Naruto had when it comes to thinking. "You love me," he smirked. "Hardly," she mumbled, cheeks barely rosy. His steps were more like a hop-skip, carefree, almost dancing through life, while hers were deliberate and clean as they crossed the street in unison. The rare student passed them, casting stares, but most had learned not to wonder why the school's golden girl and the scholarship drifter walked in together. As they neared the school gates, Naruto glanced sideways. "Thanks. For the food. And the jacket." She avoided looking at him. She could still smell him in this jacket, but she would never say or dare do it in public. She just whispered, "Don't get ramen on it again." Naruto wore a slim-fitting, open orange jacket that was much darker than his previous one, even though he was still dressed for school. The two walked side by side at one point, savoring their drinks and meal, holding that bubble of silence. "Oh, here they come." Naruto hummed, taking a step towards and back. She didn't leap or react to his hand stroking her leg and hip, pushing her closer and out of the path as a dozen students sprinted past them, gasping badly, looking like they'll vomit and pass out any given moment. "I can't stand that urchin," she replied somewhat hatefully. Naruto snorted. She didn't flinch when Naruto said, "He's fine, kid cannot hurt a fly. All he has is bad breath." "Did you hear that rumor?" Her mood shifted slightly. She loves gossip, in all its forms. The explanation is because she has a very boring life. God, what now? Naruto had better things to do than worry about someone he doesn't know, care about, or have ever met. He didn't enjoy drama. "Our science teacher smells like a dead body, I would know." Raising an eyebrow and grinning slightly, Naruto said, "You would know what a dead body smells like." She must be aware of how absurd this sounds. She crossed her arms very confidently and said, "Well, he smells weird, and I've never smelled a dead body before, so that means he must smell like a dead body." There was no room for doubt in her reasoning. "What about cum? Dude could be a chronic coomer or something like that." For that, he was beaten. He was aware that he would be, but a girl who was just 5 feet tall wouldn't really hurt anyone. They immediately approached the school after Naruto's out-of-pocket retort to the foolish hypothesis of their teacher gathering dead bodies. Popping out his color, adjusting his sleeves, steely eyes met him. "Don't forget we're meeting for lunch." "I don't. You're always late, like every time. You don't have to wait for me." "I will. Now walk me to class." Thus he did, slightly shipping and being late for his own. Didn't matter to him. They met again at lunch. Naruto was a little late, but not by much. When she presented the package of food she had prepared that morning, she remained silent. It has always been practice. Naruto stayed on the pitch half-assing the meal she made, scoffing it down like a barbarian before throwing a ball. The ball, not a ball. She learnt yesterday the difference. She wrote notes, replicating what she knew by heart and what she drafted down herself in different highlighters to help Naruto do the bare minimum to pass any of his lessons. Interrupted by other girls as she did one of her favorite activities. Gossip, she likes it sincerely. They went back to the classroom after practice and, as usual, got together on the rooftop. Naruto asked, looking down more than he should, "Don't you have after-school club stuff to worry about?" She straightened her posture and tucked some hair behind her ear. "I should, yes, but I don't feel like it." She was aware of the consequences of making such a statement. He kept laughing. "You sound like me, Miss Perfect Little Princess," he giggled. Naruto was hanging at the end of a rope here, so she was correct when she added, "As you said, I'm perfect. Nothing will change, you skip and you're expelled and can't spend the day with me." "That you are. What you wanna do?" Naruto is an orphan. No one will wait on him, and she lives up the block, living in the luxury, expensive apartments the school created for the affluent, rich kids. She had a curfew, but her parents didn't watch her, so she stayed at his apartment for a few days. She leapt towards him and extended her arms. Naruto had always caught her, twirling her in a half-circle before laying her on the ground. He always does this, and she likes it. She brushed some hair from her face and looked up. "This isn't a date, and if you keep staring at my ass make it not obvious, dick." Unfazed, Naruto smiled. "You're the one who jumped into my arms like a damn Disney princess." "Correction, I'm the one who has to drag your crusty ass through life so you don't flunk out and wind up selling socks online. That would make me money." That notion entered his thinking. Was that something he could actually make money on? It seemed painful for her to say, "You're an idiot." And yet, here you are. She will always be. As they strolled, she rolled her eyes and pulled his jacket closer to her body. "I only hang out with you because I like projects." "Wow. I'm a project now. A failing one." They arrived at the intersection where the city broke apart, with rows of little stores nestled between tall buildings, a tiny street market, and a movie theater with a partially damaged neon sign that said, "Gold CINM, still in place." Naruto arched an eyebrow. "You said you wanted to do something." Nalyin gave a blink. "You remembered? You only said it 5 times, while poking me in the ribs. I was making sure it got into your underdeveloped brain." They went by a street seller. Before she could object, Naruto paused, took 2 hot dog sticks, and thrust one into her hand. "I'm paying," he declared. "You only ever say that when it costs less than a soda." Around a mouthful, he smiled. "Can't spoil you too much, you'll get used to it." She chewed silently without responding. Every few paces, their elbows touched as they continued to walk. Neither took a step back. They had no idea what to watch. Naruto picked a silly comedy again as something with explosions and gags that made her roll her eyes halfway into her popcorn. The cinema was virtually empty, just them and a few middle school kids in the back row attempting to be cool. Na Yian dropped a bit of popcorn halfway through and bent over to retrieve it. With his eyes fixed on the screen, Naruto mumbled, "This is the part where the main guy dies." "No way," she said. "Watch." 30 seconds later, the guy got shot. "I hate you," she uttered in a deadpan tone. "You love me," he replied in a whisper. This time, she didn't argue. After that, they strolled aimlessly. Simply meandered through peaceful backstreets and convenience businesses. She talked about a little controversy at her cram school. He paid closer attention than normal. They eventually arrived at a little neighborhood park with a rusty jungle gym, 2 swings, and 1 slide. She dropped into a swing, legs kicking gently at the ground. On the other was Naruto. She questioned, "Why here?" "Because no one's watching," he explained, "and it's quiet." "Didn't think you liked quiet." "I don't." He prodded the soil with the point of his shoe. "But it's easier to hear what you're not saying." Na Yian tilted her head. "And what am I not saying?" "That you like spending time with me." There was a brief period of silence. Her swing's chains creaked. "Maybe," she answered, voice faint now. Naruto grinned without looking at her. "Yeah, me too. Just because you're sweet doesn't get you out from studying or doing laundry." Fuck. The fragrance of old baseball leather and detergent filled Naruto's flat. Really, it was a box, with 2 rooms if you included the bathroom, which was currently boiling due to a broken pipe that he had yet to mend. With a plastic laundry basket on her hip, Na Yian stood by the door, staring at the space as if it may bite her. Tightening the makeshift belt, she let out a groan of frustration. She took some of his clothes. He still hasn't washed the blue baggy shorts she always wears here, so he's only wearing his joggers and his zipped-up jacket. You know, most people separate whites and colors. As he flipped through a crumpled math workbook while sitting cross-legged on the floor, Naruto looked up. "I do. I separate them into one big sad pile." She let the basket fall next to him. "You're lucky I'm bored." "You're lucky I'm cute." She tread on his foot. He winced, but didn't stop smiling. They started working. Naruto dug out the socks lying under furniture. Na Yian folded garments that were hardly fit for clothing. The washing machine shrieked like a banshee as it started, but neither of them flinched. She eventually discovered an old picture hidden among piles of unused notebooks. A little, sun-bleached image. Naruto and an elderly man with a smoke and a worn-out smile. They stood near a river, both squinting into the light. She didn't inquire. I simply gave it to him as though it were a delicate object. After taking it and staring at it for a little longer than he intended, he slipped it into the back of a book. "That's the one who raised you before the writer?" Naruto nodded. "What was he like?" "Stubborn. Smelled like ashes and always wore socks with sandals, but he never lied to me, not once." Na Yian remained silent, but her hand briefly rested on his shoulder before moving away. They went to the window table, which was only large enough for 2, after doing the clothes. With a disappointed expression on his face, Naruto sagged forward while holding a pencil. "I hate math. You hate thinking. Same thing." She slipped his workbook toward her. "All right, listen. You don't have to be good at this to pass." Naruto gazed at the sheet. Inspiring. She tapped the paper and snorted. "Focus. Try this one." He did. Badly. She gave him a correction, patiently but with growing irony. "You can throw a baseball through a moving tire from 30 feet, but you can't multiply fractions?" "I throw things. I don't divide them." She laughed more than she intended to at that. Startled, he looked up. "You laugh like a real person." She continued to smile, but said, "Shut up." After that, they didn't speak much, simply worked. Calm and cozy. He scratched his head a lot and mumbled complaints. She hovered, unknowingly leaned too close, and used her pen to point out errors as if she were attempting to stab the page. He once grabbed for a marker, and their hands came into contact. Once more. This time, neither drew away. Not right away, anyhow. When she departed that night, she didn't return the jacket. All she said was, "I'll see you tomorrow." He added, "Don't forget your laundry soap." She halted at the door. "You keep it." He blinked. "Why?" "Because the way you wash clothes is a crime against fabric. Consider it a donation to public decency." She then disappeared down the corridor with her feet silent and her hair swaying. With his jacket on and soap in his hand, Naruto stood there for a minute. He shook his head, grinned to himself, and trailed behind him as usual. They remained silent. Naruto followed because it gave him a sense of security as he moved through the night. At first, she didn't mind because she was safe. She never would tell, but this is her favorite part, reliving how they met. 3 months ago, Uzumaki Naruto lost his final bill to a vending machine with a grudge. It was a cold morning, the machine was half covered in condensation, and his stomach was a black hole of skipped dinners and coffee withdrawal. He hit the button for canned coffee, watched the machine flicker, whir, and take his money without a single drop of pity. He peered at the slot as if he wished hard enough, it wouldn't feel perfect. It didn't. He kicked the base once and mumbled, "Are you serious?" But then again, then with emotion. Someone cleared their throat behind him. He turned. A girl in an ironed hyacinth jacket, skirt scarcely ruffled, heels polished like mirrors. Her arms were folded. Her eyebrows were critical. "Did you just try to assault a vending machine physically?" Naruto gave a blink. "It assaulted me first." She moved up, slid a glossy card through the machine's scanner, and clicked a button. With a delightful ping, a hot can of coffee landed onto the tray. She handed it to him without looking. He stared. "What, just like that? You were going to break it. I didn't want to get blood on my uniform." Naruto accepted the can slowly. "So are you bribing me out of a felony or something?" She answered bluntly, "Consider it charity," and turned to walk away. "Wait, hold up." He strolled alongside her now, sipping the coffee. "What's your name?" "Lee Na Yin. I'm in your grade. You've walked past me 15 times. "Cool, cool. You always give caffeine to delinquents, Na Yin?" "Only ones dumb enough to pick fights with appliances." He was back the following morning, but this time he had a single coin and an obstinate demeanor. She appeared directly behind him. The same beautiful skirt, the same unimpressed look. You again," he echoed, hitting the button like he was defusing a bomb. "It works." "Just barely." She didn't walk away this time. Simply stood by him and took a sip of her drink. "You live around here?" "Yeah. Apartment with the broken elevator and the questionable mold." She hesitated. "Alone?" "My guardian used to reside with me. He passed away," he replied in a tone that seemed casual. Na Yin didn't reply immediately away, then she muttered, "That sucks." "Yeah. One beat. Parents probably wouldn't let me hang out with someone like you," she remarked nonchalantly. With a smile, Naruto said, "Then it's a good thing you're already doing it." "What?" She blinked. "You're present. You're speaking. It counts." Na Yin opened her lips to argue, closed it. "God, you're exhausting. You see? We're connecting." Suddenly, it began. It was simply two people standing next to a vending machine, acting as though they didn't need anyone, but they weren't quite ready to leave either. It wasn't really friendship or hostility. Lee Na Yin was a structured person who enjoyed well-organized schedules, tidy notes, and uniforms. She liked being the most brilliant person in the room, the most collected, the one teachers nodded at and other girls chatted about. She was not fond of Uzumaki Naruto, she told herself that. He annoyed her from the moment he walked into her morning ritual and grinned as if the world hadn't let him down a dozen times already. His clothes were dirty, his hair was matted, and his eyes were too bright for someone so impoverished. He was also loud and unconcerned. He wasn't part of her world, but nevertheless, he never stayed out of it for long. She recalled the first time she had laughed at him. He kept going to her cafe copyright during a study session that she had grudgingly consented to, and the baristas began to ask him questions. She was teaching derivatives, and he wondered if they were some sort of polka copyright mon evolution with a math theme. It was so foolish, so immature. Before she could stop herself, she laughed, and he did too. The sound lingered in her chest like static throughout the day, and when he failed to notice, she began to watch him. At practice, shirt untucked, ball going like fire out of his hand. He didn't pitch like someone with training. He pitched like someone who needed the world to notice he existed. Like someone who didn't have time to be discreet. He wasn't just talented, he was fascinating even when he was aggravating. And God, was he aggravating? He didn't ask questions when she brought him food. He didn't thank her properly, either. Just smiled. Took it. Ate as if it were the only pleasant thing in his life that day. Maybe it was. She kept bringing food. Her pals didn't understand. Why him? They would inquire. She once said, "He's interesting," before realizing her mistake. Like a zoo animal? Someone laughed. Exactly, she answered too hastily. But he wasn't a zoo animal. He was a wildfire. And part of her liked standing close enough to feel the heat. She hated how her jacket now smelled like Hema hated that she had worn it anyhow. Hated that her heart jumped when he touched her casually, like it didn't mean anything. Hated that when he didn't touch her, she noticed. Na Yian detested vulnerability, but with Naruto, it didn't feel like weakness. Instead, it felt like breathing. He never said anything serious or gave her a long look, but she could sense it behind the jokes, the tired eyes, and the easy smile. When she left his apartment the night they did laundry together, she didn't say goodbye. Just said she'd see him tomorrow. Left her jacket behind on purpose. And when she walked home alone, hoodie pulled up, face calm, her fingers kept brushing the strap of her bag, where his laundry soap still rattled softly inside. She didn't care, she told herself. This wasn't real, she told herself. She continued to smile the entire way home, though, and even now, as they arrived at her gate, she was spinning on her heels, which was an amazing feat. The two locked eyes and the wind began to pick up. She reached for her hair tie and pulled her hair back without thinking, and he saw her fingers move quickly and delicately, just like everything she did. She stared at him then, and he wanted to say it for an odd moment. Not "I love you," he wasn't that far gone, not yet. But maybe something smaller. "I should not like you as much as I do. I think about you when you're not around. You give me the impression that life is more than just getting by." God damn it, Jiraiya's story will end when she says, "You'd look terrible in my jacket." She stared, stunned. "What? It's very large. It would drown you. You're not orange, either." A rhythm. She brushed the dust from her skirt and stood up, saying, "You're an idiot." With a smile, he said, "You love me." "Not today," she whispered, her cheeks flushed. She didn't really deny it, though, and she purposefully flicked his ear as she passed him. He didn't push it, so he let her go, but his chest remained warm for a while. Standing and looking, Naruto watched her walk into her house. "Hey, kid." Staring over at the night shift officer, a younger man in his 20s. A beer was tossed, catching it without much thought. "After that, you'll need it." Laughing, the young man smiled with sideways teeth. Usually, if someone tried to embrace him like that, he would throw a punch or two. However, the man is right. He opened the beer and walked home in solitude, embarrassed by what he had just done, till he fell asleep and woke up. With his jacket still on from the previous evening, he sat on the side of his bed and rubbed his face with both hands. His phone buzzed once, and Na Yian said one word. "Coffee." Just a directive disguised as a recommendation, without any punctuation or emojis. Naruto chuckled under his breath, grabbed his backpack, and threw it over his shoulder. Maybe things weren't okay. Not entirely. However, she sent a text, and for him, that meant everything. He locked the door behind him and jogged toward the shop, already picturing her frown, already hearing whatever insult she'd wrap her concern in today. The coffee shop smelled like baked sugar and burnt espresso. The usual two officers stood near the front, both mid-conversation, until Naruto appeared. "Late again," one of them added with a grin. Naruto said, "Try saying something original," and gave them a sluggish salute. Na Yian was already inside, sitting at their customary window seat with her arms folded and her drink unopened. She said, "You look like you rolled out of a drainpipe," as soon as he took a seat. "Compliments of the day. I was concerned you'd go easy on me." She slid a paper bag across the table. Inside, egg toast, still warm. With reverence, he opened it. "Thanks," he whispered. "You're welcome, and don't eat like a caveman this time." For a minute or two, they sat in comfortable silence. People strolled about them, but their table always felt like a little island. Eventually, she spoke again, her voice now quieter. "Did you sleep?" He shrugged. "Enough." She didn't push. Rather, she took out his partially folded math paper from her bag. "We're reviewing this while we walk." "Na Yian, it's morning." "Yes. And that's when people with goals function, come on." With a dramatic sigh, Naruto got up and stuffed the last of his bread into his mouth. He bounced a little with each step as they strolled outdoors side by side, her pacing sharp and clipped. The city had begun to stir outside, with voices, horns, and opening storefronts. However, the world seemed strangely motionless between them. He initially purposefully gave incorrect answers to the questions she read aloud. Then little less incorrect. Then not wrong at all. And when she smiled a tiny, involuntary, "Rila," he felt something warm settle under his ribs. He didn't say it. However, that was his favorite part of the day. "You'll be late again walking me." She claimed she didn't want him to leave her early, but he needs to. First class is a walking corpse, he won't care. Good. Naruto arrived late, like he often did. Ignoring the words from random pupils, he sat in the far back corner tossing a ball in the air like he normally did. His middle-aged, sickly-looking teacher didn't bother to mark his tardiness or stop his lecture, and his chalk remained on the board. When the local school bully started writing words on a girl's shirt, he became aware of it. Without a sound, Naruto stood up. Something she doesn't know is his affinity for fighting. The exhilaration, the pain, flesh ripping open on your knuckles, slamming into someone. Justice was brought forth, and friendships and tales were made. So, when his teacher met his gaze, and no words were exchanged, he viewed it as a chance to fight. God, he couldn't remember the last time he fought. He's been missing, and he was hoping that this one would make his heart beat. Naruto grabbed a grip of Guinam's hair, dragging the boy up and on his feet. Naruto grinned. Damn, took it like a champ. Not the first time, huh? Notebooks snapped shut, chairs scraped the floor, and gasps filled the room. Guinam staggered, his face contorting from smugness to growling wrath as he gripped the back of his head. You psycho! He yelled, lunging forward, but Naruto was already running. He took a sudden step back and cocked his fist once again. The instructor was still silent. Deliberate and disinterested, chalk against the board. In fact, his quiet encouraged the fight. After a moment of freezing, Guinam grinned. Big mistake, dumbass. He lunged. Naruto remained unflinching. With a bang that reverberated off the walls, his fist struck Guinam's jaw first, hard and clean. Guinam reeled, blood flowing from his nostrils. The classroom erupted as some pupils screaming, while others backed away immediately. Guinam didn't go down. With a frantic swing, he grabbed Naruto's shoulder. In response, Naruto sent the other youngster flying into a desk with a knee to the gut. The teacher still said nothing, gazing in quiet. Naruto continued. His current rage was not new, rather, it was a result of years of suppressing it. Years of being viewed negatively and called less. This was fairness. This was the intention. Naruto caught Guinam by the collar as he attempted to crawl backward. You touch anyone again like that, he said, and I won't stop next time. One final punch, brutal and fast, sent Guinam falling, immobile. The silence that followed was total, with no breath and no strain. Not content, Naruto pulled out his ball one again as their gazes met. That baseball would end up in his mouth if he stood up. Grabbing Guinam's bag, the blonde opened a window and flung his possessions through it, including a cell phone. Naruto covered the girl's shoulders with his orange jacket and sat on top of Guinam's desk behind her. Sit. The bully sat in the corner of the room. Without a word being said, the class started. Good boy, do anything to this girl again and I'll cave your jaw in. Naruto sat down, facing the teacher without a second thought, his fear for the boys attempting to fight back nowhere to be seen. Despite the boys' best efforts, Guinam is not and never will be a threat. Whispers about what had transpired erupted as Na Yian grabbed her phone across the campus after her teacher left with a girl covered in blood and injuries. Waiting for anything, she sat back down near to the door in front of the class. Her phone exploded as she blinked. It couldn't be Naruto. He is presently unable to send texts because he failed to make a payment 8 months ago. Naruto shares most of her lessons with Yuna, a girl with whom she has never spoken. In order to assist her with the boy's studies, the two exchanged phone numbers, and to be aware of any attempts to court him. Naruto engaged in combat. It was just a question of time. Guinam was severely beaten by Naruto. Not good. Guinam, the school bully? Can Naruto fight? Threw his items out the window. Guinam didn't even fight back after the first hit. Naruto is a fighter. How on earth is he able to fight? You don't wake up knowing how to fight. Also, he handed his jacket to a girl, sat behind her after. If she were like Naruto, she would scream at the top of her lungs, enraged. She is the only one allowed to wear anything of his, that did it. She didn't show anything on her face, but her jaw clenched slightly. The kind of reserved reply that meant everything if you knew how to read her. She glanced out the window for a while more, then slipped the phone away. Naruto was a fool. An impetuous, irresponsible, tiresome idiot. Her heartbeat had also increased, for whatever reason. That did not sit well with her. Not at all. She was supposed to be focused, supposed to stay clean, untouchable. She still questioned whether his knuckles were bleeding, though. Wondered whether that girl was still wearing her jacket and inquired as to whether he had been sent to the office. He was not texted by Na Yian. Didn't inquire. But once, just in case, her gaze strayed to the corridor. Na Yian took her time after class. Her style wasn't like that. But her feet were more direct than normal, quicker heels clicking down the hallway toward the far end of the school, where the troublemakers were typically tucked away. She discovered him leaning against a row of lockers, bandaging his hand with a cheap strip of adhesive. His knuckles were rough and red. Unsurprised, he looked up as she got closer. "Word travels fast," he remarked nonchalantly. "You're an idiot," she answered. "You already said that this morning." She paused in front of him, eyes studying his face. "You didn't have to go that far." He was writing on her shirt, "Na Yin. What did you want me to do? Watch." She didn't answer right away. She tightly crossed her arms. "You gave her your jacket. Why did she become upset over that?" Naruto gave a blink. He wrote all this shit on her back, had to cover it up somehow. She dug through her suitcase and discovered her first aid box, which she had never opened before today. "What you did was fine, just stupid." Without uttering a word, Naruto extended out his right hand. Cleaning and dressing the wound, she grinned. "You kicked his ass. If you get it fights, I'll hate it, but don't you dare embarrass me by losing." "As you command, princess." "Good," but she started discussing what had transpired in class. Startled, Naruto learned everything there was to know about the bloodied girl who had been abducted and drugged by a teacher. Later, as the lunch bell rang, Naruto repeatedly pounded a post at the ballfield. Holding her name badge in her hands, she had her breath in horror. While fiddling with her hair, an older female replied, "Just do it, girl. You two are made for each other." In the school's culture, name tags are unique. Giving someone else a name tag is a sign of the utmost trust, not just friendship, but love, or something quite similar. She dropped her name tag inside the boy's old dust bag. 14 females squirmed and screamed at this. It has been 3 months in the making, and they don't see this happen very often. The sound of windows breaking and the yells and cries of dozens of people became louder and louder until everything was silent. Footsteps grew louder before she could comprehend what was occurring. Watching people fall from multi-story buildings, Naruto, the couch, and a few other practicing players hurried towards the skull with obvious panic. She wanted to help Naruto, so she got up, grabbed her suitcase, and followed. As she watched 2 students tackle the coup and rip into his guts, she was the only one who froze. The other lad trying to drag one off had a body fall upon him as Naruto flung someone off his body, getting to his feet before turning around and escaping. She froze, unable to move, act, or understand the information that was happening around her. She was then knocked to the ground by someone slamming into her. A wet, meaty thump. "Come on," Naruto was grabbing her and hoisting her up. She finally grasped all that was going on around her at that precise moment. They're eating each other. Her breath began to pick up, shallow and fast, and her face was cradled that quickly. She was somewhat calmed by the words, "Listen, nothing bad will happen to us. Just do what I say, okay?" The blonde tosses their bags over their shoulder while holding their metal bat. "I need both hands, okay? I want you to hold my back and look out behind us, okay?" A nod. They moved, and he tried to go first. The school must be ground zero, but that was immediately amended. The courtyard was flooded, and going anywhere was practically impossible. To many bodies, so he accomplished what should be impossible and ridiculous. He shoved inside. Locate a partially turned floor and doors he may lock until the situation settles. The doors crash shut behind them. The commotion of the outside world is hushed for a moment, like sound underwater. But inside, it's worse. Students race by them, blood covered, eyes wild, shoes squeaking on tile. Someone is sobbing. Someone else is yelling a name over and over. As children attempt to hide, lockers burst open. Naruto clutches his bat. Na Yin uses her suitcase as a weapon. The lights flicker. Next to them, a girl smacks into the wall, her eyes rolling white and her arm twisted strangely. She foams at the mouth. She's still wearing her cheer uniform. She twitches, spasms, then rushes on all fours after a fleeing bunch. Naruto doesn't watch. He bolts. They arrive at the steps. The wall is streaked with blood like warnings painted by fingers. From within a smashed backpack, someone's phone rings. They climb, skipping stairs. Halfway up, a boy slides past them, screaming, dragged back down by something too fast to see. Take a snap. Crunch. The shouting ceases. Na Yin looks over the railing. Naruto yells, "Don't look," and pulls her onward. At the top of the stairway, they reach the second-floor hallway, which led to 2 to 5. And that's when the fire alarm goes off. Scree. Red flashes come from the strobe lights. Shadows shift with every blink. And in that flashing terror show, they see them. 4 students are bloody, jerking, crawling out of room 2 to 3. Their jaws hang slack. Bones reset and pop. One of them snaps their wrist to slide it through a desk's opening, rising to their feet with a crackling sound like dry leaves. They make a turn. Naruto is visible to them. They also charge. Na-Yian lets out a cry. She is pushed forward by Naruto. They run away. From every door, hands reach out as some diseased, some imploring. Some classrooms still contain human beings, but they are too afraid to open the doors. The infected close in, running full force into walls to sharpen their teeth while their bare feet smack the floor and spray blood. Light fittings are used as monkey bars to crawl across the ceiling. Turning, Naruto swings his bada wham. A jawbone flies as a head cracks. With blood streaming down his face, he screams, "Left a now." They make a turn by sliding. 10 feet separate rooms 2 to 5. The door is blocked by one afflicted person. Min Jae's, a boy from Naruto's homeroom, is someone they both know. His eyes have vanished, leaving just white with red streaks. He exposes his teeth, hissing. Na-Yian throws her luggage, hard. Whack. It smacks against Nim Jae's face, startling him. With a bat-first lunge, he smashes through the deceased boy's skull and falls like a corpse. Naruto stared at a boy inside who was holding the door when he slid it open, forcing the boy to trip and fall down with it. Naruto pushed her through while staring at those creaturessa people he knew and backing up next to the familiar one. Trauma to the head, blood loss? He had to know. Stopping and making sure his rear was clear, he waited to enter. His bat sliced through the air as those he once knew charged with the intention of killing. The initial hit was to the side of her skull. Enough to break the side of her head. Not dead, the body fell. Cursing, he brought the bat farther down between his two hands, making a quick smack to the other, forcing it to lose its balance. Stumbling against the locker, the second strike impacted the back of her skull, dropping her body. Blunt force trauma was his key. Kill the brain. With a powerful stomp, the one remaining on the ground was put down. When the door was finally closed, the boy with the glasses glared before Naruto hurried over to Na-Yian, standing far away and tidy. She appeared flawless as always, with not a drop of blood on her. Na-Yian stood at the far end of the room, arms curled securely around herself. She had lost her bag. Her eyes were glassy. "You're not hurt?" he asked. She gave a headshake. Relief caused him to stumble a step as he let out a deep breath through his nostrils. There were just 6 students in the room as he turned around to face them. "I'm half crying. One is in prayer. Another was brandishing a pair of scissors like a sword. They all regarded him as a monster." Naruto used his sleeve to dab at the blood on his face. His jaw and cheek were smeared with red. He had ripped knuckles. He said, "Anyone bit?" No one spoke. "I'm serious. If you're hiding, Ida." "No," the lad with the spectacles said in a shaky voice. "No one's bit, not yet." From behind Naruto came the quiet yet forceful voice of Na-Yian. Min Jae was. The quiet became oppressive. Naruto didn't elaborate, he didn't have to. After placing the bloody bat next to the door, he turned and eventually approached her. Each step felt heavier than the last. The adrenaline had begun to bleed off. All that was left was fatigue, agony, and the horrifying realization that this was just the beginning. He reached her. She didn't say anything. Neither did he. She reached for his hand, carefully pulling down the makeshift bandage she'd done that morning. Now it was completely covered in new blood. "You shouldn't have thrown your bag," he added calmly. "Could have used the extra weight in your swing." "You shouldn't have stopped to kill him," she answered. "Could have just run." His lips quivered. "You know me. Bad habit of caring too much." At last, she turned to face him. Something raw in her eyes. But suddenly her hands were steady. When others faltered, she always remained steady. "I'm sorry," she muttered. He blinked. "For what?" "For freezing." "For Na-Yian." She came to a halt. Took another look at him. He lowered his voice and said, "I don't need perfect. I just need you here, and you are." A rhythm. Her shoulders drooped as she let out a breath. Naruto turned to face the other students in the class. Fortunately, the windows had metal bars. No shattered glass. Still. The screaming had continued outside the door. Someone hammered on an adjacent locker. Somewhere down the hall, a fire alarm still wailed through the turmoil, an unyielding reminder that the world was burning down. "Block the vent," he mumbled to the group. "Cover the windows. Creep. No lights, no sound." The child with the spectacles asked, "Why should we listen to you? You're just some dumb jocka." His voice remained steady and unwavering as he said, "Because I'm the reason all of you are still breathing." After that, Nobody quarreled. Naruto faced Na Yian once more. Get some rest if you can. And you? He leaned against the wall, next to the windows, bat now in his grip again. She didn't like that and said, I'll keep watch. She walked over, slow and quiet, and sat next to him anyhow. They stood shoulder to shoulder with their backs to the wall. Put an end to insults. Jokes are over. Just alive, breathing, and waiting. And for the first time in their short, weird relationship, they didn't pretend not to need each other. The brief moments of quiet were broken by a knock on the door. His head snapped on a dime, sprinting towards the door quicker than her in an attempt to stop him. Open the door. Don't open it. Don't, said the two. A girl and a boy were able to enter the classroom unharmed after that boy with the spectacles was hauled off once more. Another, a heavier boy dressed in white, entered the classroom and began to breathe heavily. Toin. Someone said, the train to Basong is like the zombies in that movie. Zombies at our school? You watch too many movies. Naruto said, what they are doesn't matter, to each of these children for the first time. He had seen them before, her classmates. They stay down with the brain dies. How do you know that? I found out the hard way. She watched as they began talking. The majority of the boys were already gathered around, discussing the situation, with everyone's attention focused on what needed to be done. As they talked, other people joined in. A boy and the class president climbed through a window. She saw 3 more girls walk in, one of them wearing Naruto's jacket, and her eyes narrowed. She clung to his jacket no differently than her. If he weren't around, it would change drastically. Nam Racho. Su Hyuk Lee, Anjo Nam. Hyo Ryung Seo. Chung San Lee. Wu Jin Jang. Oh Jun Young. Ji Min Kim. Han Jong Soo. Yoon Isak. Min Ji Kim. Na Yian Lee. Un Ji Minimum. After being introduced to every surviving student in front of him, Naruto Uzumaki said aloud, I hate Korean names. You're all getting nicknames. Now the room was small. There are too many corpses. There are too many overlapping murmured voices. Some hunched in the corners as if they might vanish into the walls, while others sat close to windows. Now, bloodstains appeared on the tiles as usual. With his arms folded and his eyes darting back and forth, Naruto leaned against the wall close to the door. His bat lay against the frame, waiting. It had been some time since Na Yian had spoken. Typical, she sat close enough to hear his breathing yet far enough away to prevent anyone from assuming they were together. I say we wait till morning, Su Hyuk murmured to the gathering. Use the dark to our advantage. Less movement outside. And what? Na Yian asked in a crisp, piercing voice. Sit here breathing recycled air with people who could turn at any minute. Everyone looked at her. We're all tired, Namra replied, calm as always. We need to rest. Not turn on each other. Easy for you to say, Na Yian said. You haven't bled. You're still clean. Some of us risked everything getting here. And now we're stuck with people we don't even know. Her gaze was fixed squarely on Jiangsu. The quiet broke like a piece of glass. What's that supposed to mean? Chung-san asked, rising taller. Exactly what it sounds like, Na Yian remarked, defiantly tilting her chin and folding her arms. I don't trust people who show up covered in blood, breathing heavy, with scratch marks down their arms. Jiangsu opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Su Hyuk said, he's not bitten, and moved ahead of him. I checked. Na Yian's voice became as harsh as a razor when she said, then maybe you need your eyes checked. Naruto shoved away from the wall. Enough. But Na Yian continued speaking, her voice rising with each word. You want to bet our survival on someone we barely know? What if he turns in his sleep? What if we wake up with someone's throat missing? Are you willing to roll those dice? I didn't ask to be here, Jiangsu finally murmured, his voice shaking. I didn't ask for any of this. Naruto stepped between them. He exclaimed, that's it, loud enough to break the silence. You don't get to decide who gets to live just because you're scared, Na Yian. Oh, I'm sorry. And who made you class president? Naruto stepped forward. No one, he said. But I'm the one who's been covered in blood since this started. I've killed more people I knew today than I want to remember. And if Jiangsu turns, I'll be the one to put him down. Not you. The room was silent. Everyone was aware of his sincerity. Na Yian parted her lips, then shut them again. Naruto faced Jiangsu. You good? He gave a feeble nod. Naruto gestured to the room's far side. Then you stay over there, not because she said so, because we need space. Everyone needs space. No one argued. Naruto returned to his seat by the door. Na Yian stood there, shaking with something she wouldn't identify. Not guilt. Not quite yet. However, it was close. Blowing steam from his nose, he drew out his cell phone. Handing it to Na Yian, he smiled softly, weaker than ever. She looked at the old, broken flip phone and said, I still never paid for cell servers, but you'll get emergency services, I think. Your birthday is the code. Her cheeks flushed and she still felt uneasy around him. She reached her feet, calling the number while on speaker. As numerous classmates swarmed around her, Naruto let out a sad-held breath. The call with the police will lead to nothing. Na Yian's shoulder was stiff as she grasped the phone. Before the call connected, it rang twice. The speaker crackled. Emergency services, what's your location? Her throat was cleansed. Highschool High School, classroom 2 to 5. We're trapped. There's been an outbreak. Students are attacking each other, biting people. It's not normal. Please send someone. A pause. Then there was a snort. A chuckle. You kids pulling some K-horror prank again? Is this another viral challenge? Naruto remained unflinching. He simply leaned back against the wall with his arms folded and closed his eyes. This is how he knew it would go. Na Yian stiffened. This isn't a joke. They're eating people. They're not human anymore. The man on the other end sighed. Look, sweetheart, I'm getting 50 calls an hour just like this. Screaming kids, blood, and prank videos. Until someone sends proof and a verified adult signs off, we will not dispatch to a school. Stay put. Lock the doors. Try not to panic. Click. The call ended. Na Yian remained still, staring at the phone like she could wish the call back into existence. Perhaps someone would believe her if she made another attempt. She slowly turned. Once more, the room was silent. A few pupils were irate. Others were afraid. Some are simply numb. Gently removing the phone from her grasp, Naruto stood up. Told you, he whispered. They won't believe us. She tried to swallow the lump in her throat as she stared at him. Then what do we do? His eyes were unreadable as he shrugged. What we've always done, survive without help. Na Yian wanted to scream at him. Blame him. Weep. Anything. But she didn't. Rather, she took a seat next to him. Nor speaking, nor touching. Just close enough that her knee brushed his. Across the room, someone started sobbing quietly into their hands. The fire alarm outside sounded like a warning that no one could hear. The call terminated. The deadline beeped once. Then there was quiet. Na Yian lowered the phone carefully. Her fingers were shaking a little, but it was becoming worse. The room had become silent, but not in a peaceful manner. Just before the lightning, it was still like a storm cloud. Next. What now? The silence was broken by a voice, desperate, sharp. The class president, Nam Ra, was the center of attention. Another person said, President, what do we do? They said no one's coming. Should we try the roof? We should leave, right? Right? Why are we still sitting here? Nam Ra, say something. Near the boarded-up window, she stood still. Her fist was squeezed so tightly around her pen that her knuckles had gone white. We should call again. Try someone else. There's no service. We can't stay here, people are dying out there. Panic piled atop panic as the intensity increased, turning into a deafening cacophony of full-blown chaos. It was all aimed at her. You're the class president, exclaimed a girl. You're supposed to have a plan. Just tell us what to do. Anything is better than this. Nam Ra opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Her calm snapped. She had trouble breathing. Naruto got to his feet. Back off, he commanded. No one listened. He stepped forward and yelled, I said back off, this time. There was silence in the room. Nam Ra recoiled from the weight being pulled from her shoulders rather than from him. She's not in charge of the apocalypse, Naruto declared. His voice had become steady and low instead of loud. Like a pitch in the last inning, measured. She doesn't have the answers. None of us does. So stop dumping your fear onto someone just because she wore a sash a week ago. No one moved. For the first time, Na Yian sensed that things might break more quickly than she had anticipated as she surveyed the room. Naruto looked in Nam Ra's direction. Now they were at ease. Thanks for trying, he replied plainly. She nodded briefly, seemingly appreciative. Then, louder than before, the shouts came back outside. Closer this time. All of a sudden, nobody gave a damn about who was in charge. It only took that one instant when Naruto let his defenses down. The door flew open and banged shut. Kong Jin-ji-yu, the archery coach, was standing there. With seconds, the elder man yelled orders, creating a wall between them and outside. However, Naruto locked eyes on the man, his hand reaching out grabbing Na-yin. As soon as she felt his hand on her waist, she let him lead without asking questions or being informed. She ducked behind him. She doesn't want to be in the middle of whatever is going to happen. Couch, your arm. The place was silent. The man's visible bite mark on his arm caught my attention. As the tension in the room increased, Yunai-sak and Cho-nam-ra just looked. With whispers erupting, the instructor tried his hardest to raise the grade as much as possible. I wasn't bitten. It's a bite mark. The teacher disputed that he had been bitten, and the three of them started fighting and yelling. Yunai-sak, refusing any answer, commanded the man to go, only for his voice to increase and grow more violent in his comments. Naruto, do something. Na-yin muttered, glancing at the whiskered boy. He hasn't turned. Why? I whispered back, perplexed as to why a man remained in charge. He saw individuals transform into beasts in a matter of seconds. Why, then, is he still in charge? Cocksucker. Thinking you can order me around who? Come here now. Taking a step closer, Naruto didn't stand back. She didn't need to be reminded twice. Go sit against the window. Kneeling nearly beneath a desk beside the window. Before the couch could answer to Naruto stepping between himself and the two girls. Any kind of stillness was broken by a haughty smack before he could react to his nose bleeding horribly. Naruto disregarded the hysteria around him as his body fell to the ground while he held his bat in one hand. He didn't use enough force in that swing to smash an apple, thus he's still alive. Coach Jin-ji-yu fell hard, his head bouncing once before landing at a strange, unnatural angle, his body smacking against the floor like wet meat. The room froze. A few muted gasps. No one moved. No one breathed. Naruto stood over him, bat still lifted in one hand, the other clasped at his side. The teacher's face quickly became covered in blood. The initial blow had instantaneously fractured his nose, causing it to collapse, and Naruto had purposefully failed to follow through. He hadn't intended to murder, not quite yet. The coach grumbled, soft and incorrect. A sound that didn't belong to the man they'd once seen ranting on the archery range. Naruto's eyes narrowed. The teacher twitched once, twice. He jerked his arm. Legs twitched. With gritted teeth and watery eyes, the man rolled slightly to the side. Not empty, not gone yet. But evolving. Naruto crouched. Studied him. The coach's fingers fumbled with the tile as though they were attempting to repel something or establish balance. But his movements weren't human. Not at all. The man's lips ripped back in a grin that was all teeth and misery. And suddenly it stopped. The body fell motionless like a machine that had run out of power, just for a breath. Naruto raised the bat again. The second blow struck the ribcage. A crunch. This time, the coach spasmed more quickly. He rolled his eyes back. One more hit. Shoulder, nothing has changed. Naruto had a steady heartbeat. His breathing calm. The remainder of the class stood frozen, pressed against desks, corners, each other. Too astonished to talk, too terrified to move. The next blow was worthless since it struck the thigh. The man let out a scream, still human. Suddenly, the instructor was on his knees, his eyes wild, his mouth open, and his nose dripping black and red. His jaws snapped toward Naruto's face, and only quick reflexes spared the child from being bitten. The bat smashed down. Skull. The crack was audible this time. The entire body of Coach Jin-ji-yu collapsed, but Naruto didn't stop, not until the eyes lost their light completely. Not until the jerking ceased. Not until the only sounds in the room were the faint electric buzz of the overhead flickering lights and his own breath. He got to his feet carefully, gazed down at what remained. Then he looked around. It was even more silent than before, the type that was judgment rather than mere shock. He sensed it. The way Na-yin peered at him from the far side of the room, fingers wrapped around her skirt. Yun-I-sak's eyes were wild when she muttered something to Nam-ra. One boy, the one who had previously held the scissors, quietly moved away from Naruto and back toward the distant corner. As if he were dangerous, as if he were next. The bat was placed on Naruto's shoulder, he was turning. Nobody responded. He was bitten, he continued. He tried to hide it. I gave him a chance. Still, nothing. Then it dawned on him. Not only because they were terrified of the infection, no, they were terrified of him. Of what he had just done. Of how he'd done it. Even worse, he had done it with such composure. Naruto gazed down again at the shattered body. Something nibbled at the periphery of his mind. Compared to the others, the coach had taken longer. He stood slowly, putting his bleeding arm across his face. "It's not just damage," he whispered. "It's the brain dying. That's the key." Still no one moved. "I hit him 3 times. He didn't stop. Not until the 4th when I took out his brainstem." He raised his head and met Nam Ra's astonished gaze. "It's inconsistent. The turning process. Some go fast, some take longer, but they all go feral the second the brain gives out." They thought about that. However, the terror in their eyes did not go away. The air was broken by Na Yian's piercing, low voice. "You didn't have to hit him like that." Naruto looked at her. Didn't blink. "Would you rather I let him bite someone?" She remained silent. With the bat still pressed against his shoulder like a badge of guilt, he surveyed his surroundings. "You're not going to survive this by hoping people get better. You survive by being sure." One more quiet moment. Then there was a murmur, "Monster." He didn't hear who. Didn't have to. Naruto stepped over the body and moved to the far side of the room. Sat near the entrance again. He still had blood all over his clothing and running down his forearms. His jaw clenched. He wasn't pleased with his actions. But he'd do it again, since he now understood what they were facing. And he had already let go, while the rest were still holding onto some kind of normal. Naruto stood in quiet by the body. Sour perspiration, blood, and a deeper odor were beginning to emerge. Something is incorrect and rot-colored. No one moved. The others stood close to walls, behind desks, gathered like prey, wondering if the predator in the room was dead, or merely wearing a human face. Naruto adjusted his grip on the bat, then crouched. He didn't ask for help. He didn't wait for permission. Slick with blood and stiffening from early rigidity, he seized the coach's arms and started pulling the body in the direction of the window. "What are you doing?" Su Hyuk inquired, voice tense. Naruto didn't answer at first. When he got to the room's edge, he used one hand to slide the window open. The cool outside air rushed in, rustling papers, brushing cold over their skin. Then he gave a tiny head turn. "We're not living with corpses." His voice was low. Lastly. Not harsh, not furious. Completed. With her lips barely open and her eyes wide, Na Yian observed from beneath the desk. "Do you have Toa?" Someone started. Naruto answered, "Yes." As if it were clear, he lifted the body of the Kocha over the windowsill's edge. Grunted. Lifted. The man's arm dropped limply over his shoulder, his head lolling at an odd angle. Then Naruto let go. In a terrible crunch of concrete and bone, the body fell like a bag of wet cement and disappeared from view. A few pupils flinched at the sound. A girl's mouth was covered. Naruto closed the window. Locked it. Then he turned and returned to his spot at the entrance, sitting cross-legged with the bat over his lap as a silent threat, wiping his palms on his already damaged slacks. Nobody expressed gratitude to him. Nobody uttered a word. However, the body had vanished. The odor was dissipating. Respect was taking the place of the panic that had strangled the room. Or fear. Perhaps both. Na Yian said nothing, but she stared at him for a long time. Not with distaste, not fully. More along the lines of comprehension. Quiet. Reluctant. She didn't smile. But she didn't look away, either. Naruto stretched out his legs, glanced once at the blood-stained floor where the body had been, and whispered to no one in particular. He was already gone. Then, stillness again. But suddenly it felt different. He was no longer just the boisterous scholarship kid with shoddy shoes and untidy hair. He was a completely different person. The person who knew what to do was him. For better or worse, they would then turn to him. The place had gone quiet again. The windows trembled from distant crashes. The shouting hadn't ceased in Hausa, muffled only somewhat by the reinforced glass and overturned desks shoved against the door. Now, the majority of the pupils sat in groups, either staring blankly at nothing or whispering. A few sobbed. Some were asleep with their eyes open. Naruto stood near the window, watching shadows dance down the corridor. He hadn't moved in about 5 minutes. Na Yian approached carefully. "You look like you're trying to melt glass with your eyes." He didn't answer right away. Then, slowly, he mumbled, "We're not making it out if we stay here." She followed his eyes. The plan was to wait, until help comes. "No one's coming. Naruto, we're ground zero," he stated in a firm yet acerbic tone. "This school of Hyasana, we're the center of this thing. There's no saving ground zero." Someone behind them shifted. Jun Young moved to the front. "We've held out this long. What if the military's already moving? With a half laugh, half scoff, Naruto turned. You think they're sending a chopper for a bunch of high schoolers? Dude, we're a footnote. A red circle on a map they've already decided to burn. You ever see a disaster movie where they don't nuke the city? Like a fracture in glass, the quiet grew. They're not saving us, Naruto went on. They're saving the world from us. Nam-Ra remained silent. It had been a long time since she had talked. Still seated, knees pushed up, almost ghost-like. The others stared amongst one another, apprehensive. We can't just run out there, Chung-san remarked. It's suicide. Naruto nodded. Maybe, but staying is guaranteed death. Su-hyuk questioned. So what do we do? Naruto moved over to the chart they'd drawn of hallways, stairwells, windows indicated in red. We adapt. Forget the barricades. We're moving. We split if we have to. Groups of 2 or 3. Quiet. Fast. I'll draw them to the east wing. You head west. Library rooftop is the new rendezvous point. Anjo said, what about you? Tapping the bat on his palm, Naruto grinned. I'll catch up. Ramen flavors I haven't tried, remember? This time, nobody chuckled. You're serious, Na-Yian remarked gently. I've never been more full of shit in my life, Naruto replied, his smile wavering. But it sounds good, doesn't it? The girl wearing Naruto's jacket started talking at that point. Her voice was mild, yet it carried. I'll go, she said hastily. I'll do it, I trust him. Everyone looked around. Her eyes remained unwavering as she tightened her grip on the oversized orange jacket. He saved me. He's right. We'll die here if we wait. Naruto blinked briefly, surprised her, but then gave her the slightest nod, as if to say, thanks, kid. He looked at all of them now. Fear, filth, and blood marred every face. Children who had matured too quickly in less than a day. After biting his lip once, he said, I'm not asking you to be brave. I'm asking you to be alive. Run. Duck. Don't be a hero. Don't try to save anyone who doesn't want saving. If someone's beat you know what to do. Don't hesitate. They paid attention. This time, they listened. Naruto turned to Na-Yian last. She remained silent. Just glanced at him with something between wrath and dread. He moved in close. Pressed his forehead lightly into hers. Tell them to move when you hear the chaos start. She nodded, lips squeezed hard. Then, without another word, Naruto wrenched the door open and slipped into the corridor. He didn't glance back. As the footsteps faded and the first shatter of glass resonated down the passage, Na-Yian stood up tall. She faced the group. Pack your shit, she murmured. We're leaving. It was a Thursday when he didn't show up. The coffee in her palm had gone cold by the time she realized he wasn't late, he wasn't arriving. No texts. No humor. No footsteps hammering the pavement. The shop's police had shrugged. Probably slept in. But Na-Yian knew better. He was consistently present. Even if it meant wearing only one shoe, having blood on his knuckles, or having ramen broth on his schoolwork from yesterday. He was consistently present. She bided her time for 40 minutes, then took a solitary walk to school. It was the first time in weeks her shadow didn't share the sidewalk. It seemed as though 100 eyes were observing her, but none of them were his, and the world was larger and noisier. The class felt longer. Lunch had no flavor. Even her favorite topic, gossip, seemed meaningless to her. When she came home, she took off the jacket she'd stolen from his floor and stared at it. Orange. Faded. Soft where his arms had worn it down. She didn't wear it again that week, however, she also failed to store it. Instead, she laid it across her bed and sat alongside it for hours, scrolling through old texts, reading idiotic voice memos, hating herself for missing a kid who never formally belonged to her. She shut her eyes, and remembered the first moment she knew. It wasn't their first altercation. Not the first time he made her chuckle, but the first time she found herself looking, when it was quiet, and no one else was around. He murmured something dumb that stuck in her ribs like a secret. She opened her eyes and thought back to the moment she understood how much Naruto meant to her. Every moment after that was hard to go, hard to be alone, and hard for her to acknowledge exactly how much she cared for the moron. Goddamn, she really does adore him. She heard Lee Soo-hyuk opening the door as she slammed back into the ground. She and the other females, who were judged incapable of defending herself or others, stood in the middle line. The truth is that, even if she wouldn't acknowledge it out loud, she's no fighter like Soo-hyuk or Naruto. One by one, they came into the hallway, and her eyes were wide. Every time they heard a thump above, a window broke, or Naruto heard a roar. She winced. She was beginning to feel afraid. I ought to have told him. I ought to have forced him to stay. I ought to have accompanied him. As they all down the stairs, they thought foolish things. Those up front are finding tactics to distract the surviving zombies, all without speaking, all without alerting the throng. The hallway was virtually dark, lighted only by dying overhead lights that buzzed like angry flies. Lockers and bulletin boards were transformed into long-fingered monsters by shadows that stretched over the walls. They passed a cracked display case. One of the younger pupils accidentally bumped it. The sound of the glass rattling made everyone freeze. Chung-san turned. Raised his fist. Hold on, quiet. From around the corner, there was a faint shuffling noise. Nor running and nor screaming and simply shuffling. Similar to something dragging its feet, they retreated. Na Yian silently but firmly grasped the girl's arm in front of her and pulled. The girl bit her lip to stop herself from whimpering. They relocated once more. Through a side hall. Beyond the teacher's lounge. With them, the entire building appeared to be holding its breath. The kitchen was awful. It had a beef and rust odor. Tables overturned. Blood smeared across the tile. A body collapsed over a busted oven, not moving. Keep going, Su Hyuk muttered. They avoided the corpse. One pupil gagged. Another fell into a sauce puddle. With keen gaze, Na Yian grabbed her by the backpack. Don't fall, she growled. You fall, we die. The girl gave a fast, wide-eyed nod. As they crossed toward the back corridor, Na Yian paused beside a damaged vending machine. It was the same sort that Naruto had once furiously kicked. She gazed at it. That memory came too readily. That day, he had been so noisy. Angry after losing his final coin. Embarrassed when she gave him coffee. When she called him an idiot, I tried not to smile. Somewhere in this school, he was now silent. She looked aside. Next was the hallway of the gym. Lockers have dents. The doors have blood on them. Su Hyuk scouted ahead and signaled. 3 infected. Slumped. Wandering. They crept past. 1 foot at a time. 1 breath every 20 steps. Jong-su faltered. Everyone froze. The infected sniffed the air while turning their heads, but didn't move. Na Yian stepped closer to Jong-su. Watched his skin. Pale. Sweaty. He's not bit, Namra muttered. I checked. Na Yian refrained from arguing, but she didn't look away, either. They reached the external doors. The courtyard appeared to be a battlefield in front of them. Grass that has been torn. A blood-streaked baseball bat. A helmet cracked. Perhaps Naruto's old practice equipment. She didn't let herself check. However, Chung-san failed to accompany them to the courtyard. He had turned down a side hallway moments ago to investigate the road ahead, stating he'd be right back. He was surprised to hear a voice. Please, please, I did everything you asked. The principal's office was half-lit, blinds torn, the air stale with stress and sweat. Careful not to make a sound, Chung-san took a step closer. Principal Song was on his knees, palms up, imploring. Gui Nam stood across from him, one eye swollen shut and drenched in blood. Gui Nam exclaimed, You locked the doors, while clutching a shattered chair leg. You told the teachers to run. You left us to die. I had no choice. You had a choice. The club came down forcefully, but then again. Chung-san's hand shot to his lips. The room was filled with the sound of wet collision. He stepped back. There was a metallic clang as a can underfoot rolled against the wall. Gui Nam turned abruptly. Who's there? Chung-san ran. With boots resounding and a yell, Gui Nam pursued. You saw that? You think you're better than me? He hurried through the hall, climbed the stairs down to the janitor's corridor, and ducked into a maintenance room. The door was locked. Quiet. Then hammering. You're dead, Chung-san. The door blasted open. Gui Nam charged. They slammed against the shelves. Chung-san used all he had to fight, including a fire extinguisher, a wrench, and a mop. With a crack to the skull, he eventually brought Gui Nam down after catching him across the face. Blood spilled. Gui Nam remained still. Chung-san staggered back, chest heaving and then saw it. With his throat ripped open, the diseased principal staggered out the door, toward Gui Nam. No, Chung-san muttered. No. Gui Nam was bitten by the infected. Gui Nam let out a scream of hate and fury rather than fear or pain. The room was filled with the vow to track him down and put an end to him, then went still. Chung-san ran. He didn't stop till he located the others again. Chung San pointed toward the distant gate. They moved in short bursts, from bench to tree, from wall to planter. Their fright was the only thing that shattered stealth. A door banged behind them at one point. Everyone dropped flat. An infected stepped into the yard. Sniffed. Twitched. Na Yian hurled a shattered phone in the direction of the fountain. It clattered noisily. The infected bolted. They ran. The alley behind the gym was enclosed by a retaining wall. An old, rusting trash can had been pulled beneath it. Students ascended one by one. Anzhou, Jun Young, Su Hyuk gave them a lift. Na Yian held out. When her turn came, she ascended without seeking assistance. Naruto's jacket, which she was wearing, caught on the barbed wire. Bit ripped. She froze. After that, I continued to move. Su Hyuk extended his hand. She paused. I took it. They fell into the alley. They had made it out. But Na Yian didn't feel safe. Not at all. She moved to the alley's corner and took a seat with her back to the chilly brick wall while the others gathered their breath. Her hands trembled. She pulled off the jacket. She folded it carefully and held it in her lap as if it were something sacred. She remained silent, didn't weep, didn't inquire where he was. But she didn't have to. Everyone was aware of the person she was considering. They relocated once more. Hyasan's streets were no longer silent. As they crossed intersections and twisted through alleyways, the spread of the sickness became evident. Fires burned in faraway neighborhoods. Some sirens rose, while others cut off too quickly as they wailed. Cars sat abandoned mid-turn. Glass smashed underfoot. Someone shrieked in the distance. Then another. Then there was quiet. The group moved low and fast, hugging walls, diving behind trash and mailboxes. They went by a bus that was parked. The windows were stained red inside. One infected slapped itself repeatedly against the glass, leaving a smear of blood with every blow. It didn't see them. Still. They came to a stop at an intersection. Across the street, a man sprinted full speed from a business, cradling a wailing infant. 3 infected gave chase. He tripped. The child let out a scream. Nobody got up to assist. Na Yian looked aside. They stepped over someone's shoe and a fallen bicycle as they went down a back alley. Once home to stationery stores, ramen vendors, and boisterous students, the city now looked like a horror film set. Anzhou murmured, "It's not just the school anymore." "It never was," Su Hyuk mumbled. They continued going. The eatery wasn't far, a modest family-run place hidden between a pharmacy and a shoe repair shop. When you saw Li Cheng's name and face printed on the new Chichkan station, you could hear a few people laughing. First to arrive was Chung San, who tapped 3 times on the rear door. A pause. Then there was a click. With a creak, the door opened. His mom was standing there, eyes wide with relief and fright, apron on. "Chung San? Oh my God!" Before she could finish, he threw his arms around her. She gripped him closely, half sobbing, half whispering gratitude to the sky. "You brought friends?" "Classmates," stated Chung San. "We need a place to stay, just for the night." His father nodded slowly. "Lock the door, then we talk." They filed in. The majority of the dining floor was occupied by the group. Tatami mats. Old pictures. The sound of a wall clock ticking away was too loud. Someone laughed for the first time in hours. Someone cried into their hands without a shred of shame. Na Yian, still holding onto the garment, sat close to the back. She didn't say much, nobody did. Inside, the eatery was quiet. Dim. From the interior, the windows had been boarded. The air still smelled of flour and soy sauce. His dad showed up. Quickly, Chung San's mother went to the kitchen to get rice, bottled water, and extra blankets. Her hands trembled a little as she filled the kettle and placed it on the old gas stove. The restaurant, albeit small, felt like a palace compared to the hell outside. No blood. No screams. Just the faint hum of a heater and the sound of dishes clattering. Anzhou assisted in arranging the floor pillows. Su Hyuk used an additional bar from the supply closet to strengthen the door. Some of them merely stared at the ceiling, while others settled into corners with their heads lowered. Na Yian remained in the rear, still clutching Naruto's jacket. It was an odd sort of solace. Warm but eerie. Little bowls of rice and dried seaweed were presented by Chung San's father. Nothing special, but nobody gave a damn. "Eat slow," he advised. "You've all been through enough." The only sounds for 10 minutes were sniffles and chopsticks. Then there was silent chuckling. The bus zombie slammed its face on the window as if it was ravenous for the vending machine inside. according to Jun Young's stupid joke. Na Yian even grinned. Although it was brief, it was genuine. Whispering, "You're safe here," Chung San's mother handed Na Yian a clean towel, at least for tonight. Na Yian gave a nod. For once, she thought it was true. She glanced at the jacket resting on her lap, ran her fingertips across the seam, folded it once again. She remained silent, failed to provide an explanation. But she lay it near her when she curled up to slumber, and for the first time since it all began, she fell asleep to the sound of boiling water instead of cries. A moment later, he was holding a big kitchen knife when he noticed the children behind his son and froze. However, the lighting were warm. The walls remained motionless. It seemed as though the world had stopped pursuing them for the first time since the shouting began. Even for a single evening. Alongside Naruto on the day Jiraiya vanished for a week, it was pouring. With a backpack full of damp textbooks and ramen packets he couldn't afford to eat, Naruto had been waiting at the bus station. The elderly man had assured me that he would return by 7. It was nearly midnight when Naruto eventually gave up and headed home, the soles of his shoes flaking off with every step. The apartment smelled of cheap beer and decay when the door creaked open. A message that had been wet through by a ceiling leak was found on the ground. "Be tough. I'll be back in a few days," that was all. He refrained from crying. Not on that particular evening. Rather, he shut the door and wedged a baseball bat under the handle while eating cold rice with ketchup. The power went off the next morning, and the water followed a day later. Naruto began talking to himself by the third day. To spirits. To a voice in his mind that sounded worse than Jiraiya. It snarled, "You gonna lie there forever?" His arms trembled with hunger as he blinked. "No. You gonna die over a busted pipe and a little silence?" His voice was raspy as he sat up. "No, then get up, you little bastard, survive." Naruto had stood, shivering, sharp bones, but standing. "Hey," he yelled. "Over here, you brain-dead freaks." The horde reacted. A dozen heads snapped toward him. Then more. Then more. Wild, quick, and hungry. Naruto ran more quickly. Through the side corridor, past the faculty lounge, down a narrow set of stairs slick with something he didn't want to name. He turned a corner too quickly, and his bat clanged once off the wall. Every time he heard them behind him, he ran faster. He reached the old gym storage passageway. The door was locked, no time to pluck it, so he swung. Crack. The bat smashed the knob clean off. He ducked inside after kicking open the door. Old bleachers. Extra mats. Mop. The vending machine is broken. There are no exits. A dead end. He turned. The first infected surged through the doorframe. Naruto made a swing. Thwack. Aluminum struck its jaw. The sound echoed like a gunshot. The zombie went down twitching. Another came. He pivoted on impulse and drove the bat into its ribs. A third dove at him from the side. He sidestepped and swept its knees with one flawless horizontal arc. They continued to arrive, so he kept swinging. Each stroke was muscle memory. Each step back was calculated. One after another, until the entryway was blocked by the heap of quivering corpses. Sweat was streaming from his temple as he panted. His sleeves were smeared with blood. Then he took off running once more. Beyond the weight room and into the alley behind the gym, out the other door. But he wasn't alone for long. There have been more infections after. With his heart racing and his breathing labored in the stuffy air, Naruto skidded to a stop in front of the massive metal door. Locked tight, his fingers fumbled with the grip. No mercy, no give. Behind him, the ravenous cries became louder, closer. Like a flood dragging him beneath, the horde was approaching slowly but unrelentingly. His grip tightened on the battered bat, splinters piercing into his palms. He suppressed the surge of fear. Running was no longer an option. Their fangs snapped with ravenous hunger as they charged forward, a jumble of rotting limbs and vacant eyes. Raising the bat, Naruto struck. A body crashed to the ground as the first strike broke into a skull. Another lunge, and with a terrible crunch, he turned and drove the bat into its ribcage. Claws raked his shoulder, causing pain, but he clenched his teeth and yelled, swinging repeatedly, each blow driven by unadulterated, desperate determination. Bodies dropped. The walls were covered with blood. The odor of decay overwhelmed his lungs. When the last one slumped, writhing in a heap, Naruto's gaze fixated on the entrance once more. Locked. Unyielding. He swallowed hard, cracked his neck, and kicked. The door groaned, trembled, then collapsed. He stepped forward. The nightmare waited. The door slammed behind him, shutting with a dull thud that absorbed the world. No turning back. The hallway stretched out and narrow, dim, tainted with shadows and the terrible, coppery scent of blood. Broken lockers tilted at weird angles, their metal mouths hanging open like mute cries. Naruto's muscles were as tense as wire, and his breath was shallow. Now the bat, his only companion and last line of defense, felt heavier. Shapes stirred from the darkness ahead. With glassy eyes and contorted faces from anguish and hunger, grotesque beings moved forward. He inhaled. Then he swung. Crack. The first monster in the temple slumped with a wet thump after being captured by the bat. It's too late to watch it fall. Claws tearing across his ribs, another slammed into him from the side. He spun, swung low, and broke a knee despite a searing pain shooting through his side. With a scream that was halfway between a growl and a human sob, the creature collapsed. Behind it, two more closed in. With a sickening crunch, Naruto's teeth broke as he evaded a clumsy swing and drove his bat upward into a jaw. His arms were burning. His eyes were stung by sweat, but his veins were burning with adrenaline. A third grabbed him around the waist, a rotten hand creeping under his jacket. With a powerful kick to the stomach, Naruto broke away and spun in time to prevent his teeth from shattering. With all of his last energy, he planted his feet, lifted the bat, and swung. Crack. The creature's torso fell into a pile of quivering limbs as its head snapped back. With a stinging taste of blood in his tongue, Naruto gasped. Splinters bit into his palms as the bat snapped nearly in half. More arrived. No relaxation. He dodged under a falling arm, rolled forward, and sprung up, slamming the bat down into a skull with a final, desperate smash. Dark blood splatters and shattered bodies littered the passageway. His eyesight was blurry at the edges, and his breath came in rapid bursts. However, the dead continued to arrive. He was suddenly overcome by a frigid surge of panic that threatened to overwhelm his determination. However, something furious simmered somewhere deep, hidden behind the terror. You're not finished. Not quite yet. Naruto strode through the suffocating horror of the corridor, his breath harsh in the cold, stale air. With every muscle taut and poised to strike at any time, the cracked baseball bat swung carelessly at his side. Before the heavy door to his left abruptly swung open with a harsh creak, his eyes scoured every shadow and flash of movement. With his heart thumping like war drums and his bat poised high, Naruto whirled on a dime. Whatever enters through that door is dead before it even leaves, his mind raced. Then, nevertheless, there she was. Teacher Park Sun-hwa had a pale yet composed face and fiercely determined eyes. Naruto's hold wavered for a heartbeat, bewilderment cutting through the fear. You're still here, she murmured in a low, desperate voice. We don't have much time. Naruto's breath caught. Suspicion mixed with relief. How? Why? Before he could inquire, the growls from down the hall rose again, closer, louder. There was no waiting for the nightmare. Park stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Come, this way. With a single nod, Naruto tightened his hold on the bat, prepared to follow and battle whatever came next. As Naruto guided Park Sun-hwa through the dim, dilapidated school hallways, his footfall reverberated sharply. A heartbeat in the frenzy, his bat swung steadily and confidently at his side. Keep close, he commanded in a stern yet quiet voice. Sun-hwa trusted the fiery resolve emanating from him and matched his pace. He was no longer awaiting approval from anyone. It was sufficient that he was moving. They slipped past shattered lockers and upturned desks, every darkness hiding hazards. The air was dense with tension and the distant echoes of cries. Suddenly, around a corner, a familiar voice pierced through the gloom. Naruto. Park Sun-hwa. Naruto froze for a fraction of a second, then shifted, eyes alert. Park Mi Jin, Jang Ha-ri, Young Min Jae, and Yu Jun Seong emerged from the shadows. Faces bleak but alive, weapons drawn. Mi Jin's features flickered between relief and surprise as her eyes slightly expanded. We thought you were gone, she added frantically. Naruto nodded curtly, never lowering his guard. We're heading to Lee Chung's chicken place, he said. Safe spot, if you're coming, keep up. Ha-ri smirked, twisting a crowbar. Lead the way, hero. Sun-hwa let out a breath as the gravity of the situation set in. For the first time in hours, they weren't alone. The promise of the chicken restaurant illuminated a fragile optimism in the darkness as the gang pushed forward together, navigating the eerie hallways. Naruto crept like a shadow across the ruined streets, bat held loosely but ready. Behind him, Park Sun-hwa and the others followed softly, their footsteps light on crumbling pavement. Naruto never turned around, despite the distant shouts and moans of the infected resounding behind them. He knew the city's perils well, every alley, every shortcut, and he led them with a steely focus born of hard survival. They ghosted past dangers without making a single mistake, avoiding main routes clogged with the undead in favor of sneaking via cramped passages and empty backstreets. The group's breathing slowed, the tension subsided slightly. Naruto abruptly stopped in front of a small, dimly illuminated food market after what seemed like hours. Stalls were mostly deserted but still filled with strewn merchandise, and neon signs flashed. "This is it," Naruto muttered. "From here, you split up. The main group takes the eastern exit behind the market. It's less guarded." Park Jin squinted. "And you?" For a brief moment, Naruto's eyes softened. "I've got something to take care of." He turned to Park Sun-hwa. "Na Yian trusts you. If anyone asks for proof that you're with me, tell them the name I gave you. The word only Na Yian and I know." Sun-hwa nodded, but her eyes grew wide. With a low voice, Naruto leaned down and said, "The faded orange jacket." The group looked at each other, realizing the significance of their remarks. It was a password and a pledge that only genuine allies knew. With a quiet vow, Naruto stroked the ripped seam of his own jacket. He replied, "Stay sharp," and vanished back into the darkness. With a secret camaraderie formed during the darkest moments, the others headed onto the market, prepared to face whatever lay ahead. Reaching his destination wasn't too difficult or lengthy. Hearing the pistol shots down far further, he let out a breath, militaristic and involved, and by the sound of everything, not doing well. Their noise, wiping away more minor portions of the city, had already run through. Breathing becomes a struggle as he stands trembling and his lungs hurt. The Ichiraku ramen stand is in front of him, gazing at the blood his brain has already digested and the body next to the seats. With the warm afternoon light creating long shadows on the cracked floor, Naruto entered the ramen stall. The air was filled with the comforting smell of broth, but underneath it was something else, something amiss. A silence that made his skin crawl. He saw the elderly man standing behind the counter, motionless and with glassy eyes. With a terrifying grimace on her pale face, Ayame leaned against the wall. Something deep inside Naruto was broken by the vacuous, ravenous look in both of their eyes. His throat constricted, his voice, "Old Mana Ayame?" The elderly man's lips parted in a guttural growl as his head jerked up in strange ways. Ayame's mouth curled into a harsh, shattered smile that bled nothing but emptiness as her breath caught. Naruto felt his chest constrict. This wasn't them, not at all. He swallowed the lump of hopelessness even though tears boiled behind his eyes. There was nothing to do. He reached for his bat with a shaking hand. He swung with such force that skin splintered and bone cracked. With a moist thud, the elderly guy fell. Naruto hardly had time to blink before Ayame lunged, nails scratching like blades on the floor. He met her with every ounce of power he had left. Something inside Naruto broke when she eventually laid motionless. The tiny thread of safety, the warmth, and the optimism all disintegrated like dust. He collapsed against the counter, breath shaking, tears streaming free for the first time in what felt like forever. Everything was gone. Everything had fallen apart, and since there was no way for him to stop, all he could do was keep going. With the group, the tiny party snuggled close in the dim warmth of Lee Chung's chicken restaurant, the smell of cooking and whispers temporarily easing the tension outside. Suddenly, a sharp knocking at the boarded-up door. Everyone froze. Na Yian turned to face the sound. "Who is it?" Lee Chung's father called hesitantly from behind the counter. A strained, frantic voice called back, "It's us, Park Sun-hwa's group. Naruto sent us, please, let us in." Na Yian's heart tightened. He had sent them, Naruto. But there was a sense of distrust throughout the room. The mother of Lee Chung slipped to the door and looked through a gap. Her voice was firm yet low as she asked, "Can you prove it?" A pause. Then, with a little hesitation, Sun-hwa's voice responded. "Thea Uma password Isa, Naruto's terrible ramen dance." A rhythm of quiet. Na Yian's cheeks flushed blazing red. After blinking, Lee Chung's mother chuckled softly. "Well, that's certainly a specific." Na Yian buried her face in her hands, mortified. "Open the door," Lee Chung's mother urged, smiling despite herself. The door cracked open to expose Park Sun-hwa, Park Jin, Jang Ha-ri, Young Min Jae, and Yu Jun-seong, all of whom had harsh, worn, but alive features. Relief rushed across the room like a delicate flood. They were safe for the time being. With her eyes darting anxiously around the room, Zhang Ha-ri stepped inside as the door opened wide. Her brother, Zhang Wu-jin, trailed behind her. Relief softened his gaze as it fell on Ha-ri, despite the tiredness and grime streaking his face. The tumult outside appeared to vanish as their gazes locked. Wu-jin, Ha-ri uttered in a scarcely audible whisper. He took a step closer and nodded. I'm here, Ha-ri, we made it. The rest of the group gathered around them, but Ha-ri and Wu-jin saw their reunion as a lifeline and a reminder of the cause they were fighting for. Na-yin watched quietly from across the room, gripping the orange jacket tighter, her heart heavy with dread for Naruto but briefly comforted by the sight of brothers reunited. As they took a trembling breath together, Zhang Ha-ri and Zhang Wu-jin stood close, their shoulders hardly touching. They clung to each other like a lifeline in this moment, despite the weight of all that had transpired bearing down on them. You don't know how worried I was, Ha-ri said in a shaky whisper. I thought I lost you. Wu-jin gave a slow shake of his head. Never, we survive. That's all that matters now. Ha-ri faked a weary little grin. You look like hell. Wu-jin laughed gently, a gruff yet sincere sound. You're not exactly a picture of health yourself. A few people in the vicinity looked at each other with relief, recognizing the precarious harmony between the twins. Na-yin moved, her hands gripping the orange jacket tightly, yet her thoughts were racing. The stillness was disturbed unexpectedly as she stepped forward, voice harsh and scared. Where is Naruto? She shouted, eyes flaming as they glanced over the group. He's missing. He's not here. We can't just pretend. Where is he? Everyone turned to stare at her as the room went silent. A knot of terror clenched in every chest as the delicate moment broke. Wu-jin's visage stiffened, his gaze shifting toward Ha-ri. We need to find him. Ha-ri nodded, her jaw hard. No one gets left behind. The urgent question of where Naruto was now overshadowing the reunion as the others muttered agreement. Na-yin's words hung in the thick silence, piercing and desperate. Where is Naruto? She asked again, her breath accelerating like a raging storm inside of her as her hands trembled over the old orange jacket. However, nobody responded. Not at all. Eyes moved aside, words caught in throats. The others looked at each other, the unsaid truth floating between them like a shadow that no one dared to voice out loud. They did not claim that he was deceased. No. They weren't saying it because it wasn't about death. It had to do with Naruto. Naruto, the unyielding, obstinate, unachievable Naruto would be all right. They thought that. What they had to think. He was untamed, careless, and an unstoppable force of nature. So nobody mentioned looking. Nobody recommended returning to the chaos. They held out. They hoped. Na-yin's mind raced as her heart hammered against her ribs. But the room kept quiet. Like a brittle shield, the implicit belief in Naruto's survival kept them all still. She tightened her grip on the jacket, her deep-seated fury ready to burst into tears. Because she knew in her heart, he might be harmed. He could be lost. Furthermore, none was prepared to publicly acknowledge it. Fear and frustration swirled inside Na-yin like an unrelenting tide, tightening her chest. She glanced down at the orange jacket in her hands, its delicate fabric torn and frayed at every thread, a reminder of Naruto's obstinate presence, his laugh, his reckless heart. She wanted to scream. To shake someone, anyone, into action. But quiet was all she sensed. The kind of quiet that indicates they think he'll be alright after all. It's Naruto. The boy who refused to quit, who raced headfirst into danger without a second thought. But what if things were different this time? Her fingers gripped into the linen as tears welled, distorting the features around her. They looked aside, unable or afraid to confront the truth she carried. That Naruto might be damaged, hurt, or worse alone. Her voice cracked. He can't be okay, not without us. Nobody looked at her. Hope clung to denial, and the room was thick with spoken fear. Na-yin closed her eyes, swallowing the increasing panic. Naruto was somewhere out there, lost in the chaos she was unable to access, while the outside world continued to burn. She was also afraid. Her breath caught as she tightened her grip on the orange jacket. The hush around her felt suffocating, like the entire room was holding its breath, pretending everything was okay. But inside her, a maelstrom raged. She thought of Naruto, his unyielding smile, his reckless refusal to give up, and the way he battled with both heart and strength. That was why no one was rushing to find him. Because they thought he was the only one who could survive. But what if this time was different? The persistent doubt wrenched in her chest. What if he had ran out of luck? She was sitting there, immersed in a tornado of hope and terror, when she noticed a slight shuffle close by. It was young Min Jae, who sat silently next to her with understanding but clouded eyes. "You worry too much," he replied in a quiet, low voice. "Naruto's not just some kid. He's a force. He'll come back." Looking up, Na Yian searched his face for assurance, but all she saw was the same ambiguity. "I want to believe that," she said, "but I can't just wait anymore." Around them, the group stirred a hushed combination of tiredness, anxiety, and fragile hope. After wiping away her tears, Na Yian stood up, her voice more composed. "We can't just sit here. If Naruto's out there, we owe it to him to try." While some heads hesitated, others nodded. The effort to cling on to Hopea and to Ichothera was far from over. Na Yian's resolution flashed as she stood, ready to push forward, to find Naruto and bring him back from the edge. But before she could say anything further, Jang Woo-jin moved forward and spoke in a composed but forceful tone. "Na Yian, sit down," he stated with steady gaze. "I know what you want to do, but rushing out now, that's not the move." The strain in her throat tightened as she forcefully swallowed. "We have to wait," Woo-jin went on. "Naruto is strong, stubborn as he is. He knows how to survive better than any of us. If he's out there, he's doing exactly what he needs to do." Park Sun-hwa gave a nod of approval. "We're tired, weak. If we split up or rush into danger, we'll just get ourselves killed. We need to regroup, recover, and plan." Na Yian's fists curled around the jacket, frustration searing like fire. "And what if he's hurt? What if he needs us?" The room was quiet again, no one ready to argue the logic, the cold necessity of waiting. Woo-jin's gaze grew softer. "I know it's hard, but right now, the best way we can help Naruto is to stay alive. To be ready when he comes back." Na Yian gazed down, the fight in her waning but not gone. With their quiet bearing down on her, she collapsed back onto the ground. Waiting felt like losing, however, it might have been their only option. Na Yian collapsed back onto the ground, her hands still clutched around the orange jacket. The room's thick quiet pressed down on her like a stone. The people around her fell into a tired silence, waiting, accepting, and resigned. However, Na Yian's internal struggle persisted. It churned, a ferocious creature scratching at her chest, urging her to persevere. Her thoughts spiraled. How can they sit here? How can they believe waiting is the answer? She imagined Naruto fighting through the never-ending nightmare by himself, injured. Her mind screamed for action, for movement, for a chance to reach him before it was too late. Beside her, Jang Woo-jin's voice pierced through the fog, quiet, steady, but firm. "Waiting isn't giving up," he remarked. "It's survival. Naruto knows what he's doing. He's out Theria Olivia because he has to be." Unshed tears burned in Na Yian's eyes. She wanted to protest, to urge that hope wasn't enough. But his comments planted a seed of reason she couldn't ignore. Nevertheless, the pain of powerlessness tore at her. What if waiting results in his permanent loss? She looked around the room, observing faces that were filled with worry and tiredness. They were waiting for a future that none of them could guarantee, not just for Naruto. She let out a slow breath and dabbed at a tear on her face. Her internal conflict didn't stop, it just changed, waiting for the appropriate opportunity to erupt once more. She would hold on for the time being. Na Yian sat clutching the faded orange jacket, her heart throbbing for Naruto as the weight in the room appeared to put more pressure on her. After a long period of silence, voices started to emerge, but they did so with quiet reason rather than rage. The first to speak was Jang Woo-jin, who spoke in a calm but kind tone. "Na Yian, we all feel it. But rushing out won't save him or any of us. Naruto's strong, yes. But he needs us to stay alive, too." Park Sun-hwa crossed her arms and nodded. "We've been through hell. If we break now and scatter, we become easier targets. We have to hold together." Jang Ha-ri's voice shook as she added, "I know it's hard, especially when it feels like doing nothing is the same as losing him. But every time someone goes out alone, they don't come back." Yu Jun Seong crouched beside Na Yian, placed a strong hand on her shoulder. "We're scared too. But being scared doesn't mean giving up. It means being smart." Na Yian raised her gaze, her eyes sparkling. "But what if waiting isn't enough? What if he's hurt, and no one's there?" From the corner, Mi Jin, young Min Jae, whispered. "We're all scared of that, but if we lose ourselves now, there might be no one left to find him later." The tension in Na Yian's shoulders gradually subsided as the room went silent once more, but her terror persisted like a shadow. They had no answers. All they had was one another, and for the time being, That had to be sufficient. Beneath her composed demeanor, Na Yian's anger simmered, a tempest contained behind tightened jaws and squinted eyes. Everyone could feel the storm's weight crushing down like a dense fog, but she remained silent, refusing to give voice to the inner tempest. Her knuckles were white as her hands gripped the orange jacket tightly. She breathed quickly and shallowly, as though every breath was a struggle. Something inside her snapped when she observed the others' tired expressions and cautious optimism. She detested the silence. Hated the waiting. I detested the gentle phrases and meaningless assurances that filled the room while Naruto was out there by himself. Her quiet was deafening. It shouted in every tight line of her body, every angry glance she cast at those who spoke of patience and survival. The only thing keeping Na Yian's rage under control was the fragile barrier of self-discipline she put up. The separation between her and the others widened with every passing moment, an unseen wall formed from whispered fury and dread. She felt like snapping, to yell, to shatter something. But instead, she sat quietly, still, burning. Her fury was a black pulse beneath the surface, ready to spill over. And no one knew how long she could hold it back. Han Zhongsu's eyes flicked to Na Yian, a wry, bitter smile pulling at his lips. Yeah, we all got fears. But sitting here brooding won't kill any zombies faster. Maybe if you yelled louder, they'd just run off scared. Though intended as a jest, the remarks hung in the air, piercing harder than anyone could have imagined. The delicate dam inside Na Yian cracked, causing her face to contort and her jaw to tighten. Her breath caught like a scream stuck in her throat as the room appeared to tilt. At first, she remained silent. Simply gazed, rage simmering dangerously beneath the surface of their eyes. Then suddenly, without warning, she smacked her fist against the floor. You think this is funny? Her voice trembled, raw and angry. You think making jokes about fear makes it go away? Tears stabbed at her eyes, distorting the room into something horrible and unforgiving. Her breath came in jagged gasps as her body trembled. The grief and rage she had suppressed erupted, no longer silent but furious and merciless. The others stared, surprised and apprehensive, as Na Yian plunged, the precious piece shattered by a stupid joke and a broken heart. Just as the room hung heavy with tension, thick and oppressive, the door creaked open with a sharp, startling sound. All eyes snapped toward it. Naruto stepped inside a disheveled, injured, but alive. His eyes were furious and wild, but clearly his, as his chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. The quiet was broken for a heartbeat. Na Yian's jaw dropped open as relief and incredulity battled on her face. The rage that had burned so intensely within of her started to slowly fade. Naruto looked around the room, finally focusing on her. I'm back. Did something happen? Y'all look weird, he continued, voice harsh but steady. As though they had been holding their breath for ages, the group let out a breath. Na Yian stood, the orange jacket falling from her hands as she took a timid step forward, eyes sparkling. And just like that, the frail thread holding them all together drew taut again. Even though the oil had long since cooled on the stoves, the air inside Chung San chicken still had a subtle soy sauce and grease odor. The lights were weak, some bulbs buzzing, others dead, leaving patches of shadow across the walls. Blankets were slung over shoulders, baggage were strewn, and chairs had been drawn into rough rings. The only sound breaking the oppressive silence outside was the infected sporadic howling in the distance. With his head bent and his eyes half closed, Naruto slouched against the wall next to the counter. The thin shirt he was wearing clung to sweat that had cooled and dried, and his jacket had been given to Unji. With the exception of the slight rise and fall of his chest, the boy appeared to be immobile. However, he was still awake and paying attention. The silence he left behind was filled by the others. Oh, we can't just stay here forever. Kim Ji-min's voice trembled with a sharpness that indicated terror. She sat forward, knees pulled to her chest, eyes darting from one face to the next. They'll find us. The infected, the soldiers, I don't care, whoa, it won't last. Namra's reply came chilly and quiet. Panicking won't help. We're safe for now. That's all that matters until we decide otherwise. Ji-min yelled, safe? There are windows, doors. We're sitting in a glass box waiting to be eaten alive. Lee Soo-hyuk leaned forward, elbows braced against his knees. His voice was steadier, the kind that grabbed attention without demanding it. And what would you have us do, Ji-min? Run into the streets? You saw how bad it was just getting here. Half of us would be dead before the hour was up. Ji-min's eyes sparkled with the beginning of tears, but her mouth remained closed. Next to speak was Jang Ha-ri, who was seated apart and had her bow resting on her lap. He's right. Outside's worse. We need a plan, not panic. At the word plan, voices burst over one another. Although there was enough food in the kitchen for the time being, some people whispered about it. Others murmured about their parents, siblings, burning houses, and communities teeming with dead people. There's always the subliminal question, what now? What comes next? Naruto ran a hand across his face. The cloud of fatigue pressing at his brain softened the sharp edges of their voices, which blended into a murmur. He needed to think, and he wanted to cobble together a road forward. But more than any load he had ever carried, the weight of the Daya, every scream, every frantic run through blood-slick hallways settled on him. He imagined Min Eun-ji curled up with his jacket slung over her shoulders, her head lowered as if she were terrified to be seen breathing. He imagined Na Yian, uncharacteristically silent, clutching her knees tightly, her gaze darting too frequently at him. He thought of the others, alive because he had acted, because he had thrust himself forward without hesitating to weigh decision against consequence. With a bone-deep fatigue that was more painful than pain, he came to the realization that it hadn't been a decision, it was never the case. An argument was forming as the sounds around him grew louder once more. Running for the police station was Kim Min-ji's suggestion. Another replied by moving back toward the school's rooftop. Another cursed, asking whether anyone even knew the way anymore. Enough. Naruto felt that the word was harsher than he intended. Eyes turned to him as the conversation faltered. For the first time since they entered the chicken shop, quiet hung. Despite his body's protests, Naruto moved and sat up straighter. His eyes surveyed the group of classmates, teachers, survivors knitted together by coincidence and sheer will. He perceived fear in them. Hope is also fragile and unpredictable. And he sensed a fracture within himself. Were Noda doing this now? His voice was hoarse, low, each syllable cut by exhaustion. He ran a hand through his hair, pulling so hard it stung, saying, "Not while everyone's like this. Not while I can't. Think straight. We'll rest. That's what's next. We'll rest, and tomorrow then we talk about what comes after." A few faces contorted, ready to object, but his Tonya final, exhausted cut them off. Naruto's gaze remained on them, challenging anyone to resist. You want to fight about it, do it tomorrow. Right now, shut up and rest. That's the only order I'm giving. Then there was silence. Heavy, yet not empty. Reluctantly, several lay back against the wall. Others looked at each other, mumbling to themselves but still complying. Hari merely cocked her head in agreement with his order. Nam-Ra measured him for a longer period of time than the others before closing her eyes and reclining. Na Yian's mouth were open as she gazed, perhaps taken aback by the directness. Her expression fluttered with something unreadable, perhaps terror but also something gentler. Naruto let out a breath that scraped his throat raw. The words had drained what little left of his vitality. He placed his head against the wall again, eyelids dropping. The last thing he registered before sleep drew him under was the faint glimmer of afternoon light streaming through the dusty windows. It was just past 3, and the sun had not quite started to set. And yet he was gone, unconscious, his body finally giving out. The room quieted with him, voices shrinking to whispers, until all that remained was the steady rhythm of his breathing, anchoring them in the uncertain blackness. Naruto fell asleep quickly, heavily, and completely. The moment his eyelids dropped close, the room shifted around the emptiness he left, the way a flock moves as its lead bird dives beneath a gust. Nobody moved for a moment, as though any movement would wake him. Then, with little, deliberate movements, life began to return to Chung-san Chicken. First to rise was Lee Soo-hyuk. He just slid to the front door and tested the chair legs braced beneath the handle without saying anything or asking for permission. Wood creaked. He applied more pressure and, just to be safe, put a second chair beneath the knob. Without being asked, Dae-soo lumbered over and leaned his weight against the barricade, seemingly offering himself as an additional board. Chung-san rubbed his cheek and whispered, "Don't break it." His voice was raspy from a day of shouting and running. He glanced toward the kitchen, where his parents moved in hushed loops that made the room feel like a restaurant again, wiping counters, straightening chopsticks that no one would use. Mr. Lee placed a metal pot on a chilly burner and gazed into it as though he could conjure up a flame. "Gas is spotty," he said to his spouse. "If it comes back, we'll warm something. Until then, water and snacks." Mrs. Lee remained silent. She delicately placed a crate of bottled water on the dining floor, placing bottles along the baseboard like troops kneeling. On the far side, Hari unstrung and restrung her bow twice, her fingers moving by memory. The bow emitted a faint, whining sound each time the string was placed. Young Min Jae gazed without blinking, a broken mop handle across his knees. He looked like he wanted to inquire whether she was terrified and couldn't find a way to make his mouth mold the words. Choi Nam Ra had stillness instead of a corner to control the space. Standing close to the center, she counted exits, bodies, and supplies with her eyes. She stated, "We need eyes at both doors," without being overt or hesitant. "Rotate every hour. No one is alone outside the main room. If you sleep where someone can see you." Soo Hyuk nodded, not astonished to hear his own ideas expressed in her voice. "I'll take the first round at the front. Dae-soo." "I'm here," Dae-soo replied, still clamped to the wood like a devoted sandbag. Ji-min said, "Don't be here too hard," as she was already on her knees beside the stream. She carefully took a sip after twisting the top, then put it down as if it were a priceless item. "We ration. 1 bottle each for now." "And food?" inquired Min-ji. She stood with her back to a picture of laughing chickens that felt indecent in the dim. "We should account what's left." "Storage pantry, 2 freezers, dry goods on the shelf," Chung-san said without thinking. He started for the swinging door, paused, and asked his parents for permission. Mr. Lee gave a single nod. "Go." Min-ji trailed closely behind the child as he vanished into the kitchen. Ems Park Sun-hwa appeared to be a woman who had recently become aware that her feet were hurting. She slid herself onto a bench, rolled one ankle, then the other, and forced a grin at anyone who looked her way. "If anyone's carrying cuts that need cleaning, come to me," she replied. "Small ones turn dangerous when we're tired." Like a bouncer outside a bar, Yu Jun-seong lingered close to the utensil bin. He took up a ladle, decided it wasn't scary enough, and swapped it for a knife whose edge was more wish than metal. After snorting at the exhibition, Mi Jin picked up a paring knife and started shaving the end of a broken broom, throwing curling slivers to the ground with her deliberate strokes. Jun-seong replied, "You're not going to stab a zombie with that," but her tone was one of wonder rather than condemnation. "I'm going to stab the day with it," Mi Jin declared. "Then, if it works, maybe a zombie." He seemed astonished to hear himself laugh. Min-eun-ji curled small under Naruto's jacket, which engulfed her up to her wrists, at the edge of a bench. In the dull light of the restaurant, the orange seemed out of place, like a warning cone on a nighttime beach. As though someone would try to take it away, she kept one hand balled in the cloth close to her throat. Nobody did. Na Yeon couldn't take her eyes off the jacket. It was always there when her gaze strayed bright, big, absurd, and warm. Her chest felt both tight and hollow at the same time. She was aware of how childish that was, which only made it worse. She pushed herself to look away, pressing her palms against her knees until her fingers began to tingle. She convinced herself that Naruto had given it to Eun-ji when things went wrong because he was always that why brave, foolish, and thoughtless. Because he stepped in without asking what it cost him. Because he only considered those who needed it, not those who deserved it. When it suited her, she had enjoyed that aspect of him. The realization hit like a pebble in her stomach and sank. Nam Ra knelt next to the water crate, uncapped another bottle, and gave it to Ems Park. "Teacher first," she said simply. "I'm hardly a..." Ems Park began, then stopped as she saw Nam Ra's face. She drank. Soo Hyuk opened the door slightly to look at the street across the room. Dusk had not started, but the light had a worn feel, the kind of afternoon that smelled like dust and old books. The road in front of the restaurant sat blank and unsafe, a stage between scenes. He shut the door again and slid the chairs back into their brackets. "Front looks clear," he remarked. "Clear isn't safe," Nam Ra replied. She pointed to the side windows. "We should block sightlines. Curtains, signs, anything to break silhouettes." Dae-soo patted his pockets solemnly and said, "I've got tape," until, like a magician exposing silk, he produced a blue roll and a marker. "What are you going to do?" Ji-min said. "Draw the zombies a map to the bathroom." Dae-soo thought about it. "If we draw it wrong, they'll get lost." The banter and little bursts of laughter that came and went like a live thing that knew better than to stay made it feel almost like class again for a brief while. Even Mrs. Lee's mouth softened. She lifted a stack of napkins for Nam Ra by reaching under the counter. "These will stick on glass with water," she replied. "You can make it Luca not like a place people are in." Nam Ra accepted them with a modest bow. "Thank you." They went to work in pairs. Ji-min and Woo Jin put tablecloths over the side windows with delicate palms, water dripping down their wrists. Rice, oil, flour, dried spice, and 3 trays of frozen wings, provided the freezer could hold them, were listed on a receipt that Chung-san and Min-ji had scrawled on as they came out of the kitchen. Mi-jin and Jun Seong positioned a low shelf to wedge against the side door's base, not enough to stop a body but enough to quarrel with it. Ha-ri took the corner near the window that faced the alley, her bow resting across her thighs like a sleeping cat. Min-jae sat near enough that she could reach his sleeve if she needed to. Naruto slept the entire time with his mouth slightly open and his lashes creating thin shadows on his cheek. Every few minutes, someone's eyes lingered on him before darting away out of fear of waking him. Na Yeon detested herself for being idle. She gathered plastic forks, an army of white teeth pointing Upa into a paper cup, placed it on a table, and then shifted it 2 inches to the left. She unfolded a stack of paper menus after folding them. She found herself near the bench where Eun-ji was sitting after picking up a fallen napkin and bending over to pick up another. Unintentionally, Eun-ji stiffened. Na Yeon noted the wince and maintained her hands in plain sight, empty. "I'm Noda," she started, but gulped back whatever apology she almost uttered and shook her head. "You warm enough?" Startled by the common inquiry, Eun-ji blinked. "Yeah. If you're not," Na Yeon replied, "say something." "Mrs. Lee has blankets, I think." "I'm okay." Eun-ji's fingers tightened in orange fabric. "He told me to keep it." On the way out, the words scribbled, "I know." Na Yeon made herself focus on Eun-ji's face instead of the jacket, noting the dark crescents beneath her eyes and the way her mouth appeared to be bitten from the inside. "It looks better on you anyway." It was an inelegant falsehood, but it removed a little static in the air. Eun-ji's shoulders loosened by a notch. "Thanks." Before ruining it, Na Yeon gave a single nod and turned away. She ended up near M's park without trying to, drawn to the solidity of the woman's presence the way people drift to a lamppost in fog. "M's park," she murmured, then, gentler, Sun-Hwa teacher. It still felt strange to pronounce, as if names had changed currencies today and she hadn't acquired the new values. As Ms. Park patted the bench next to her, Na Yeon sat with her hands folded and her back straight, as if she were waiting for an exam. She was not given a test by M's Park. Warm from her palm, she gave her a square of chocolate that she had taken from a pocket. "Eat. Half." "Where did you?" Na Yeon started, then considered how many pockets M's Park likely kept full on a regular basis for herself and for any student who required a sugar bribe to pass algebra. She returned the larger piece after shattering the chocolate along its seam. M's Park took it without dispute and ate in solitude, and Na Yeon let herself taste sweetness for the first time all day. Soo-hyuk changed his stance and rolled his shoulders in the front to avoid becoming rigid. "We need a backguard, too," he remarked. "Just in case." "We locked it," Chung-san remarked from the counter, a little too soon. "Locked is not watched," Nam-ra declared. She weighed and glanced across faces before saying, "We'll add it to the rotation." Jun Seong. Min-jae. "You two take the first back watch. Switch with Ha-ri and Dae-soo in an hour." Jun Seong lifted his chin, as if to say, "Finally." Min-jae nodded without looking at anyone save Ha-ri, who gave him the slightest okay. "Bathroom is there," Mrs. Lee answered, pointing down a narrow passage toward the rear. She didn't finish, saying, "Back door is past it. Delivery door locks from the inside, but locks were recommendations in a society where people raced headfirst through glass." Jun Seong answered, "We'll listen," and for once, he didn't seem arrogant. After 2 turns, the dim engulfed him and Min-jae as they vanished down the hall. There was an odd, soft silence that was typical of afternoons in family-oriented establishments. On a table, a long-dead person's phone lay face-up, its black screen reflecting light like an eye. A siren outside began to sound, then abruptly stopped, as though embarrassed to be discovered attempting. Once more, Na Yeon's gaze discovered Naruto. It felt like a compulsion to count how many times his chest lifted, making sure the number is always one more than the last time you counted. He looked younger now than he ever did at school, the scruffy arrogance wiped away by sleep. She had never seen the lines at the corners of his mouth. He had half-moons of scab on his knuckles. She almost stood to drape a napkin over his shoulder and stopped herself, ashamed by the instinct. What would that even do? Instead, she folded the napkin into smaller squares. She thought, he can't be the one I wait for, yet it didn't break her. It simply rested next to her like a bulky bag that she had at last acknowledged was hers. Across the room, Nam-ra came to stand beside Soo-hyuk's shoulder. They didn't speak for a lengthy period of seconds. The stillness between them wasn't awkward, it was language. "You don't have to stand the whole time," she remarked at last. "I know." He didn't move. She cocked her head toward Naruto. He'll be out for hours. A corner of Soo Hyuk's mouth moved to say, good. He needs it. So do you. He huffed, the closest he came to laughter on low oxygen. Start a line. Nam Ra was not grinning. Not precisely. However, a filament caught a current and warmed something in her eyes. When you need to sit, she replied, you sit. Tell me, and I'll stand. He said, okay, and meant it. After completing their window patchwork, Jimin and Woo Jin took a step back to appreciate their work, which featured uneven napkin squares fogging the glass into an inexpensive frosted pane. The room became safer and blunter as a result. Dae-soo adhered the blue tape to the counter like a badge after finishing it with a flourish. Mi Jin tested the point of her broom spear on a chair leg. It made a courteous dent. Chung-san came out of the kitchen carrying a rubber band and a zip-top bag filled with rice. If we get gas for even 10 minutes, we can make juke, he replied. He gave his mother the bag and said, it'll stretch. Without saying anything, she nodded and tucked it under the counter like she was placing cash in a register. Naruto made a little, animal-like shift while he slept, indicating that a portion of him was still moving. His head turned. His cheek discovered a cooler area of wall. His breathing became steady once more. The sound of gentle footsteps, the click of a bottle cap, the creak of a chair, and the whisper of napkins against glass all contributed to the group's uncomfortable but manageable pace. They had more of an arrangement than a plan, a technique to keep hands occupied while minds learned to be silent. The slight smell of wet concrete and old cardboard accompanied Jun Seong and Min Jae as they came back from the back hall. Doors locked, Jun Seong declared. I kicked it, twice. He stated it like a confession, not a boast. Nam Ra said, don't advertise we're here, yet her voice wasn't harsh. She pointed to the floor beside the door. Sit there. Listen any time someone walks. Min Jae immediately fell to the ground. Jun Seong hovered, then collapsed beside him with a sigh that sounded like the start of resignation. Mrs. Lee went through them again, carrying a plastic basket filled with damp towels. Hands, she whispered softly, and the children extended their hands as if they were kids again, allowing her to wipe away the day in moist circles. She saved Naruto for last though he didn't wake, rubbing at crusted blood on his knuckles as if it may apologize for the day it represented. When she was done, she stood back and gave him the kind of look moms give tired boys they recognize but did not nurture. He needs a dream without running, she remarked to no one, and to everyone. The room dimmed half a shade when a cloud passed across the sun outside. The napkin-fogged windows appeared to be iced river ice in the light. For a short while, children were gathered in a warm location, waiting for parents with a car that never showed up, and it nearly seemed like a typical winter afternoon. Nam Ra checked her mental clock and tapped Soo Hyuk's elbow. Switch, she said. He shook his head once. 10 more. She refrained from arguing. She took 2 steps to the side and stood anyway, close enough that if he swayed, her shoulder could catch him. Na Yeon drew a small square with her fingernail on her folded napkin across the benches. Not a heart, not a name, it was just a small box, something she could fill without feeling bad. Naruto slept. Outside the glass, the city held its breath. And inside the modest eatery, a new order, a small, homemade, humana took root in the space he'd provided for it. The diner had grown quiet again. Not peaceful and never peaceful, but silent in the way a wound goes numb before it starts aching again. In the corner, the kids murmured to one another as the older pupils tried to divert the younger ones. Those too tired to communicate just stared at the floor or into the middle distance, thoughts anywhere but here. With his head thrown back and his breathing deep and even for once, Naruto had fallen asleep close to the distant wall. Nobody dared to bother him. He had carried them through the day, and even Na Yeon, arms crossed as if she didn't care, had restrained others from stepping too close. The side entry was rocked by a forceful knock just after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The silence broke. There were 3 more urgent, terrified knocks. Everyone paused, their hands frozen in midair, their throats choked with whispers. Mi Jin said, her voice shaking slightly, did Anyania? Then came the voice, please, please, open up. The scream was muffled yet frantic, heavy with tears. Nam Ra's head shot up first. Her eyes grew wide. That's Hisu, she remarked as she started to approach the door. Soo Hyuk didn't hold back. The others gazed in shock as he pushed the barricade back, wood scraping the floor. Hisu practically tumbled in as the door opened. Her lips were cracked, her face was pallid and smeared with filth, and a baby was in her shaking arms, wrapped in a faded pink blanket. Oh my god, Chung San's mother exclaimed as she suddenly got up from where she had been arranging the remaining food. Everyone in the room flinched when the infant let out a big, screaming cry after making a faint, soft whimper. Iya, his voice faltered, her knees almost giving out as her breath caught. Please, please, just to take her. She can't be alone. Chung San's father moved forward first, his large figure firm but his face creased with perplexity and anxiety. Hisua, what happened? Where are your parents? They didn't. Her throat struggled, but no sound came out. She just shook her head vehemently. Please, just take her. Please, take my baby. Eun-ji extended her arms and moved slowly and gently. Here, sweetheart, she said. Let me hold her. You look like you're going to collapse. With shaky hands, Hisu surrendered the kid. Adjusting Naruto's jacket over her for warmth, Eun-ji nestled the little shape close, holding the infant to her shoulder. The infant hiccuped and then fell silent, gazing up at Eun-ji with dark, wide eyes that were unable to comprehend the misery she had been born into. Then, however, Hisu's sleeve slid, and it was visible to all. The biting mark was unmistakable. Jagged tooth marks, swollen and crimson, with black veins moving up toward her elbow. With one hand shooting to her mouth, Chung San's mother gasped. No, Mi Jin shook her head in disbelief and muttered. Hisu tried to grin, but it came out broken, her lips twitching. I know, she murmured. I knew before I came. I couldn't leave her there. She's innocent. She didn't do anything wrong. Mrs. Park walked forward, her countenance firm even as her eyes shined with sorrow. You can't stay, Hisu, she stated kindly but firmly. I know, Hisu stated again. Her eyes were fixed on the infant, taking in every detail of their small face. Please promise me you'll take care of her. With tears welling up in her lashes, Eun-ji blinked forcefully and muttered, we will. I promise. Hisu's expression of relief was so intense it was painful. She bent forward and gave her infant's forehead a final, shaky kiss. Be good, she said in a whisper. Be strong. She then turned to face the door. Nobody tried to stop her. Not because they didn't want to, every instinct shouted to grasp her, pull her back, but because they understood. With a gentle click that nonetheless reverberated like a gunshot in the ensuing silence, the door shut behind her. No one spoke. Then the infant cried once again, a tiny sound that strangely added to the intensity of the situation. The stillness was ultimately broken by Chung San's father. All right, he remarked gruffly, glancing from the toddler to the crowded throng of pupils. We're going to figure this out. She's ours now. Figure this out. Min Jae scoffed from near the barricade. His voice quivered, but he pushed bravado into it. We can't even feed ourselves. What are we supposed to do when she needs something? When she cries? Are you saying we just leave her? Mi Jin snapped, spinning on him. Throw her out like garbage. Is that what you want, Min Jae? Her statements were as forceful as a slap. Min Jae averted his gaze and blushed, but he remained silent. Calm yet uncompromising, Mrs. Park's words broke the tension. No one here is suggesting that, she stated. She stays. We take care of her. That's the end of it. As she approached Eun-ji, Chung San's mother nodded and softened her attitude. She stated, we'll need to take turns, with a more pragmatic than sentimental tone. Feeding, holding her, keeping her quiet if we move. She can't be left alone, not for a second. And supplies, Chung San's father said, massaging the back of his neck while his eyes flew to the shelves that were almost empty. We'll need to think about how to stretch what we've got, and if we can find anything useful when we head out again. Nam Ra, quiet as ever, wrote notes on the scrap of paper she'd been using to maintain their tiny inventory, her gaze unreadable but sharp. Soo Hyuk stood close to the door, clenching and unclenching his fists at his sides. Na Yeon's arms were tightly wrapped about herself as she stood off to the side, gazing at the infant. Something harsh and strange had twisted deep in her chest at the sound of that little cry. She detested the sensation yet was unable to ignore it. With each gentle breath the infant took, Eun-ji's visage softened as she softly rocked the infant. We'll figure it out, she said to herself. Mrs. Park put a steady, strong touch on her shoulder. We will, she echoed. The infant moved once more and yawned, a sound so tiny and human that it caused a number of people to blink back tears they were unaware had accumulated. For the first time in hours, there was a sliver of something in the room that wasn't fear or rage. It was almost hope, but not quite. After Hisu closed the door, quiet held the room captive for a considerable amount of time. The world seemed to be holding its breath, and the only sound was the tiny, hesitant whimper of the infant. Every pair of eyes was staring at the bundle in Eunji's shaking arms. Some were wide with terror, while others were heavy with an unidentified form of grief. Mrs. Park was the first to move. As she moved closer, the silence was broken by the sound of her shoes shuffling on the worn linoleum. Her look was firm but gentle, like someone reminding the room to breathe. "All right," she murmured softly, her voice piercing the mist. "She's safe. That's what matters now." Eunji gave the infant a tight hug while blinking, as if she were scared the child might disappear if she released her hold. Her voice trembled as she said, "She's so small." Chung San's mother walked forward and put out her arms with a kindness that came from instinct. "Here," she murmured gently. "Let me take her, just for a moment." Reluctantly, Eunji allowed the transfer, her gaze following every action like a tether. The baby made a small sound in her sleep, and the mother gasped as she carefully adjusted the blanket. "She's beautiful," she muttered. "So quiet. Poor thing, she doesn't know what's happened to her mother." A few heads dropped at those remarks. Na Yian's fingers tightened around the sleeve hem, her nails sinking crescents into the cloth, but the pupils remained silent. She detested the way her stomach twisted, whether it was due to fear, anger, or something else she didn't want to think about. What she detested even more was that she couldn't identify which part of herself wanted to cry. With a raspy voice from too many days of yelling and not drinking enough water, Chung San's father cleared his throat. "We'll need to ration better," he stated. "Formula, blankets, diapers, anything we can find." He paused and frowned as he looked at their meager heaps of recovered food. "She won't make it otherwise." From behind, Min Jae mumbled something harsh enough to cut, but not loud enough. "And what happens when she cries while we're moving? You think the dead won't hear that?" Nam Ra looked up from her quiet position beside the window, eyes serene and steady. "Then we plan for it," she stated. Although there was no place for terror in her tone, everyone nonetheless felt a sense of dread in their chests. Na Yian's throat was constricted as she sat rigidly on one of the fallen boxes. The words slid out sharper than she meant them. "And what if planning isn't enough? What then?" Everybody looked at her. The first to retaliate was Eunji. "What, you want to leave her outside? Is that what you're saying?" Na Yian's face flushed. "No, because that's what it sounds like," Eunji retorted, her voice shaking with a mixture of dread and fury. Soo Hyuk pushed himself off the wall before it could become any worse, speaking calmly but with a steel edge. "Enough." His eyes swept throughout the room, immobilizing the two girls. "This isn't helping anyone." Nam Ra slipped the pencil into the spiral and closed her notepad. Even though her voice was quite silent, it was still audible. "She's scared," she whispered, her eyes meeting Na Yian's for the briefest moment. "We all are." Na Yian wanted to fight, to clarify that she didn't mean it like way, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she bit the inside of her cheek and gazed at the floor, resisting the flush crawling up her neck. Unfazed by the stress, Mrs. Park talked softly while adjusting the blanket around the infant. "She needs a name. We can't just call her the baby." The silence that ensued was more subdued, almost respectful, as though naming her might serve to ground her in their precarious reality. "What about Hee-young?" Eunji replied nervously, peering around the room. "After her Moma so she won't forget her." Mrs. Park's throat began to work as her look softened. "Hee-young," she said again, putting the name to the test. Her voice faded to a whisper as she peered down at the infant. "Little Hee-young." Nobody was in disagreement. Finally, Chung San's father stated, "She's ours now," in a firm but quiet voice. "So we protect her, no matter what." Night crept in slowly, shadows stretching long across the tight diner as the last amount of sunshine disappeared, and somehow it's only 4:30. The infant slept through the majority of it, and those near enough to hear her small breaths found weird solace in them. Talking about rationing, rotating watches, and when they would have to risk another run for supplies, the adults crowded in the corner, their discourse quiet but tense. The pupils remained apart. Nam Ra sat against the far wall, her notebook resting on her knees while she wrote lists of supplies, patrol shifts, escape routes. Soo Hyuk stayed nearby, leaning against the doorframe like a quiet sentinel, his eyes moving to the windows every time a distant sigh echoed outside. Mi Jin whispered to Min Jae about bottles and blankets, wondering if they would even know what to search for if they got to a store. Min Jae remained silent, his mouth clenched as he stared at the scuffed floor. Na Yian, too, Na-Yian sat by herself with her knees bent and her gaze following the shadowy silhouette of Naruto hunched over in the corner. Even when he slept, fatigue left thick shadows beneath his eyes, and he hadn't moved in hours. She detested the way it made something in her chest hurt. He had been the key to their survival for days, acting as their shield, anchor, and steady hand amidst the mayhem. And somewhere along the way, she'd started to believe he'd always be there. He had boundless strength. They would be protected as long as he was with them, with her. But seeing him like this, slumped and still, human in a way she hadn't allowed herself to think about, it broke something in her. Because she now recalled that emotion. That helpless, hollow smallness she believed she'd left behind. And she didn't know how to solve it. The atmosphere in the room had changed by the time Mrs. Park asked them to settle in. It was now heavier but quieter. She stated, "We'll take turns tonight," in a tone that was unambiguous. "No one sleeps more than 2 hours. Someone will stay with the baby at all times." Chung San's mother nodded, rocking little Hee-young lovingly. "And tomorrow we'll figure out who goes for supplies." No one volunteered. Not quite yet. The stillness was finally broken by Soo-hyuk. He said simply, "I'll go," leaving no room for disagreement. Nam-ra's eyes narrowed as her head snapped up. "Not alone," she said. Soo-hyuk said, "I won't be," as he glanced at Naruto. His voice became hardly audible. "He won't let me." Mrs. Park gave a quick nod. "We'll decide in the morning. For now, everyone rests." One by one, they faded into their corners, the baby's calm breaths filling the room with a delicate kind of peace. And Na-Yian sat in the dark light, staring at her hands, trying to quiet the storm inside her. The restaurant was quiet in that unpleasant way, silent, yet strained. The infant slept in Mrs. Park's arms, a rare mercy. In an attempt to make the modest pile appear larger, Chung San's mother was sorting the canned food once more. While Soo-hyuk stood guard near the barred front with a pipe laying across his knees, Nam-ra wrote in her notepad, silent and astute. And Naruto, who had been slumped down for hours, had not moved. Jacket hanging slack, head leaning against the wall, he seemed more dead than sleepy. Then the bang came. Footsteps followed, a harsh bang of metal against wood. Not the lingering stagger of the diseased, but swift, deliberate. The room's atmosphere became tense. Soo-hyuk was on his feet in an instant. Mrs. Park retreated against the kitchen wall while holding the infant tightly. Nam-ra didn't move, but her eyes moved toward the sound, sharp and attentive. The back door burst open. With their weapons drawn, 2 men stumbled through. A younger man in a dirty uniform with wide eyes and labored breathing, and an older man with a ripped coat and a grim determination. The gang froze. The men did the same. The baby's soft wail and the ragged breathing of the 2 intruders were the only sounds for a moment. Then the older man, Song Jik, spoke first. "Survivors," he whispered, voice low, almost incredulous. "There are survivors." Jaeon Ho-chul, the younger police officer, swallowed hard and clutched his baton as if it were the only thing keeping him standing. We didn't know. I thought this place was a." "Shut it," Jik hissed, not taking his eyes from the group. His eyes ran over Tama, bloodied, tired, warrior but alive. His hand hovered near his revolver, not in menace but habit. Soo-hyuk stepped forward, pipe raised. "Who the hell are you? What do you want?" Slowly, Jik raised one hand, palm out. "We're not here for you. Just passing through." Nam-ra's voice was like steel. "Passing through to where?" Ho-chul blurted out, "The school," and his senior gave him a stern look. The surviving recoiled at that one word. Eyes flashed between each other. Even the infant let out a quiet whimper, recognizing the sudden spike of tension. Mrs. Park tightened her hold on the child. "Why the school? There's nothing there but monsters." Jik exhaled deeply, running a palm over his face. "There's evidence there. Laptop in the science office. Data that could explain this mess and maybe help stop it. That's what we're after, nothing else." Before anyone could speak, his attention snagged on the corner. The blonde child sagged against the wall. Naruto. For the first time, Jik's fatigue gave way to anything akin to recognition and disbelief. "You've gotta be kidding me," he murmured. "Of course it's you." That broke the room's tension in an entirely new way. Heads turned toward Naruto, still dead to the world. Confused eyes flitted between the survivors. "You know him?" Nam-ra inquired, hesitant. Jik laughed harshly, half exhausted, half disbelieving. "Know him. Kid's practically a regular down at the station." Street fights, rooftop chases, you name it. Always walked because it was never him starting, Ida just finishing what someone else started. Every damn time. The younger police officer blinked. Wait a that Naruto. Yeah, JIK replied, softly shaking his head. Tough as nails, pain in my ass. Figures he'd be the one dragging a whole group through this hell alive. That was a powerful blow to the room. The students looked at each other, Soo-hyuk's brows knitting, Nam-ra's eyes narrowing with silent calculation, and Mrs. Park tightening her grip on the infant as if she suddenly realized why they had made it this far. The stillness was ultimately broken by Chung-san's father. You're telling Maya that kid saved them all? A smile appeared on JIK's face. Wouldn't surprise me. He's got more fight in him than half the squad back at the station. The tension changed, becoming less antagonistic but still intense. Then Mrs. Park's angry voice interrupted. So you're not here to help? JIK's expression darkened again. We're here for the laptop. That's it. We don't have backup. No trucks. No orders to clear buildings. Just us. The words hung heavily. Soo-hyuk's grip tightened on his pipe, but he didn't lift it again. Nam-ra squinted as she considered the implications of that. Ho-chul shifted uneasily, his eyes darting from the floor to the infant. There's a quarantine zone, he said without thinking. West side, Yangdong Gate. They're taking survivors there, food, medical tents, soldiers. It's safer. Mrs. Park's lips parted, hope and dread battling in her countenance. Safe zone. Yes, JIK answered, voice flat. But you need to be smart about Ida East Side's crawling. We set off, half the horde getting here. You try the main roads, you'll never make it. Nam-ra closed her notebook with a gentle snap. Then where? Cut through the sports fields, suggested JIK. Cross the river, south to the gate, quieter paths, less chance of being seen. The information was a lifesaver, but it came with enormous risks. At last, Chung-san's father spoke again, his voice calm yet heavy. The science office is on the second floor, east wing. What the school's like now, I don't know. JIK nodded curtly. Appreciate it. Nam-ra's voice sliced in, sharp as a sword. The school is where it started. Don't lead them back here. JIK grinned faintly. Wouldn't dream of it. He gestured to Ho-chul, and the two made their way to the rear entrance. The rookie paused, taking one last look around the room, pausing momentarily on Naruto's motionless figure, the baby, and the tired faces. Then they were gone, and quiet fell again, a thicker now, heavier with fresh information and a gnawing sense of urgency. With a shaky breath, Mrs. Park embraced the infant more tightly. West, she said, as if saying it aloud would make it real. If we can just make it Westa. Nobody responded to her, not quite yet, and in the corner, Naruto slept on, ignorant of the storm that had just roared through. Na-yeon's hands tore another piece of cloth on autopilot. Rip, fold, knot. She kept her head down, but her thoughts wasn't here. It drifted back to every other time she'd had to stitch him together. She'd lost count of the evenings she'd stomped down to the station, shoes unfastened, muttering beneath her breath. Even though his shirt was shredded and his knuckles were raw, Naruto would be sitting in the back, his chin tilted up, lips split, and beaming as if he had won something. The desk sergeant would seldom look up anymore, just thumbing in that direction. Half the time, they'd let him go because of who he'd been battling. A corrupt landowner, the son of a gangster, and a wealthy brat who believed that striking a woman made him a man. The cops disliked him for it, but they couldn't make it stick. He would simply follow her silently, as if he knew better than to argue, while she drove him home in a rage and muttered about foolish heroes and wasted nights. Then there were the mornings that followed, when she sat on the edge of his dilapidated couch and wrapped gauze around his ribs as he attempted to remain motionless, joking that at least he hadn't broken anything significant this time. Or the days when she covered her purple bruises with cosmetics to avoid the neighbors' constant stares. She also recalled the stench of his apartment, which included cheap ramen, antiseptic, and cigarette smoke that permeated everything. When she threatened to break his other arm if he was ever pulled in again, he laughed. The way he'd stare at her, Thina, not furious, nor sad, just worn out. Like he wanted to say thank you and I'm sorry all at once, but didn't know how. He appeared younger than she had ever seen him, dozing in the corner, as if none of those years had passed at all. She placed the strip in the bowl with the others after tying it off more tightly than she intended. Her hands became still. For a moment, she wanted to wake Hima not to talk, to make sure he was still real. But she didn't. Instead, she mumbled under her breath, almost too soft to hear. "You always did come back in pieces, didn't you?" The words left Nayan in a whisper, softer than the buzzing of the broken ceiling light above them. They weren't meant for anyone else to hear. Maybe not even for him. Naruto remained motionless. The way her voice cracked at the end didn't cause her to grunt, move, or even flinch. His lashes remained against his skin, and his chest rose and fell in a steady, almost hypnotic cadence that suggested the nightmare they'd been enduring had finally chosen to spare him. Nayan sat with her fists twisted in the skirt hem, her knuckles whitening from the tightness of her fingers. She gazed at him as she usually did, with a helpless mixture of wonder and frustration as well as something deeper than she had ever dared to identify. She recalled each visit to the station. Before she was standing in front of him, bruised, bleeding, and half smiling as if it didn't matter. She had stomped down cracked concrete sidewalks, cursing under her breath and too angry to notice how her hands shook. "Got into it again, huh?" she'd asked once, trying to sound sleepy instead of afraid. And every time, no matter how horrible he looked, he'd gotten up. He had always left that station with her by his side, as if nothing could stop him. But now, gazing at him laying so calm on the floor, she felt insignificant. She was smaller than she had ever been. He could just go since it wasn't a battle. This wasn't some rival group that was more talk than action. For the first time, she questioned whether even Naruto could bear the weight of the impending end of the world. Hushed but urgent sounds rose from across the room. Park Ji-young's tone was keen, practical, cutting through the stale air. She was talking about choices of routes, supplies, risks. With a strained mumble, Chung San's parents responded, considering what they would need if they attempted to relocate everyone. The majority of the pupils sat in uncomfortable groups with their heads lowered, their anxiety so intense that it seemed like there was another person in the room. Anjo chewed her lip raw. Soo Hyuk hovered near the door, eyeing the darkened street beyond the boards as though he could will it safe. Nam Ra was silent but focused, recording every word as her gaze darted between each speaker. Nobody mentioned his name. They all wanted to ask, what do we do without him? But nobody did. Na Yian's throat constricted. She heard the planning and the words, but it didn't matter. It didn't stick. She never took her eyes off of him. She thought coldly, without you, we're useless, an admission that was painful. We don't even know how to breathe unless you tell us how. All of us are here only because of you. There was a type of stillness that pervaded the room like a thick fog as the talk faded. Her lungs ached from the thickness of the stillness pressing against her ribs. No strategy. No bravery. Just the weight of waiting and that oppressive silence. Perhaps she was broken by the waiting. That never-ending, powerless waiting. Her knees lightly scraped the uneven floor as she moved in closer. Her hand lingered slightly over his sleeve. Even though it seemed like the rest of the world had died, she could feel the slight heat of him, the evidence that he was still alive and breathing. I apologize, she thought. Her eyes stung, but she didn't cry. She'd sobbed too much already, had emptied herself out somewhere along the line. This is not what I want to do. I have no desire to beg for more. I've only caused you problems, while you've given everything. However, I am unable to do anything. When it's you, no. Park murmured something about holding off until daylight behind her. Someone else, maybe Chung San's father, concurred. As Na Yian knelt there motionless, the words, military, safe zone, and supplies, faded into static. Her fingertips quivered. You look so tired, she said in a slow, husky whisper. So damn tired, and I still need you. Even after everything, you think I wouldn't by now, Buddha. She swallowed hard, her throat dry and tight. With a cracked voice, she exhaled, I don't care if you hate me for it. I just need you here. Right here. Just to wake up, Naruto. Please. She put her hand on his sleeve. The fabric was scratchy under her fingertips, torn in places, still stained with flecks of dried blood from conflicts she hadn't been there to stop. Her chest ached as if it may break in two as she paused. She then gave him a shake. Initially, just enough to cause his body to move beneath her hand. The hum of voices behind her stopped. One by one, heads turned. They remained silent, afraid to speak up. Park, who just moments before had been the loudest voice in the room, remained mute. Nobody tried to stop her. She was not instructed to let him sleep. Because they all knew what she knew. Without him, they couldn't accomplish this.
So this was it for the series. I hope you enjoyed it. To watch more series like this, subscribe to my channel. Till then, bye bye.